I'm going to call the meeting of the Planning Sustainability Commission to order. It's 5 o'clock, and believe that you all have an agenda before you. The first order of business are items of interest from commissioners, if there are any. Or are there any interesting commissioners? Question mark? Well, here comes an interesting commissioner. And now a director's report, or have I given you enough time to settle down?
We're good on no report this month. Thank you.
Okay, well, are there, other than the minutes, anything else on the consent agenda, Julie? With that in mind, are there any additions, corrections, concerns about the minutes? If not,
Move adoption. Second.
in favor?
Aye.
So ordered. I want to welcome everybody, and there are a lot of everybody's out there tonight, on a hearing on the annexation of Hayden Island. A couple things before we begin. There are a number of you who have signed up to testify. We have a limit here of about 60 before we finish at 9 o'clock if we stay at a 3-minute limit. And although I look like a very sweet, gentle old man, at about 3 minutes after about 2 of these, I get kind of cranky. So please, please keep your testimony, which is important to us, really, to 3 minutes. You'll be reminded with a beep, and then I'll gently try to remind you to finish. So let's do that. With that in mind, let me call on Eric Engstrom to give us a briefing, and we can start.
Thank you. My name is Eric Engstrom. I'm with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. You're here, as you mentioned, to begin a hearing on the annexation and comprehensive planning designations for West Hayden Island. A brief reminder of where we are in the process. We released a last draft of this proposal in November of 2012, and you held a number of hearings then, also heard a lot of testimony. And based on that testimony, you initiated a couple work sessions that span January through March, which we went through a number of the topics that were raised in the topics of concern that were raised by your discussion at the time or the public testimony at the time. Based on the direction we heard in those work sessions, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability went back and revised our draft and has resubmitted it, and which is the topic of this hearing. We're going to have a hearing today, and then this is also on your agenda next week, if needed. If we were to finish tonight, that wouldn't be needed, but I suspect we will need at least part of that. You also have on your tentative agenda, I believe, you have time blocked out on the 28th of this month to have another work session, and that presumably is when you will talk between yourselves about what you heard in the hearing and discuss any additional amendments to the staff's current draft. We also intend to come back to you with our responses to testimony on the 20th of this month, so a week before that work session. We'll give you the staff's response to the testimony, the issues that we've heard, and including comments from other city agencies and bureaus that we've received at that point. So going into the 28th, you'll have staff recommendations which could be thought of as a staff amendment package, and then you'll have any other amendments you wish to make in that, and then you can discuss and make motions. Beyond that, then it's your decision as to when you want to call the vote, but we've discussed either a June or a July timeframe, depending on what your schedule looks like. Tonight, you're going to hear from a variety of people. Up front, there are a number of representatives from tribal governments that will make a few remarks, and out of courtesy, we've asked them to go first, so Howard will introduce them when I'm done. You'll also hear from, in keeping with the protocol that we had in the previous round of hearings, we've asked 3 representatives from our advisory committee process to talk to you as opening remarks, which includes a member of the community, environmental stakeholder, and the port. So they'll think of those as just opening remarks from different perspectives on this. And then after that, we'll go into general testimony. Also wanted to remind you that that you should have available to you quite a bit of written testimony that's been submitted as of today. Julie's uploaded that to the site that we already provided a link to. So don't forget to read that. That's also part of the record. So I'm not going to spend any time talking tonight other than give you that brief orientation. But are there any process questions before I turn it over to Howard? Okay.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Before we begin the general testimony and the invited guests, I want to call to the stage, or to the podium, if I may, several representatives of the sovereign nations here tonight. Tribal representatives of sovereign nations, pardon me, tonight. I'm sorry. We're honored to have you, truly, and want to hear what you have to say. So it's my pleasure to ask Janice Squeox and Diane Barton. Janice is the environmental coordinator for the Yakama Nation, and Diane Barton is the water quality coordinator for the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. And a welcome to both of you. Thank you. Squeox. I think I said that right.
Like Chairman Shapiro said, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here. My name is John Lee Squeox, and as he said, I'm the environmental coordinator with Yakama Nation Fisheries. And I am here to present on behalf of the Yakama Nation to express our concerns with the proposal by the City of Portland to annex and zone West Hayden Island for industrial development. This action would impact treaty-reserved fishery resources, as well as our vision for restoring the health and productivity of the Columbia River. We are compelled to oppose this proposed action on the basis that it is contrary to the interests and effort of the Yakama Nation to preserve, protect, and enhance treaty trust resources and fishing rights. The Yakama Nation excuse me, is a federally recognized sovereign tribal government, and with certain reserved rights that were guaranteed in perpetuity by the United States in the Treaty of 1855. What was true in the centuries before the treaties still rings true in these current times for the Yakama people and the generations yet unborn. The salmon and the health of the Columbia River are paramount to our culture, our religion, our livelihoods, and our health. This relationship with the Columbia River and its numerous invaluable resources, particularly the salmon, is why the Yakama have continued to remain active stewards of the resources associated with the river. The actions proposed for this annexation fail to include adequate protection for these resources, and this is at the cornerstone of the Yakama Nation's opposition. This damage to these valued resources as it stands can ultimately never be undone. The ecological benefits and values of the West Hayden Island ecosystem provides are irreplaceable to maintaining a properly functioning Columbia River ecosystem. Furthermore, tampering with this system will affect more than 100 species of fish and wildlife, including several federally listed anadromous fish species. On a larger regional scale, this proposed plan for industrial zoning and development is inconsistent with a regional effort for salmon recovery. The Yakama Nation is concerned that the efforts to annex West Hayden Island for the proposed purposes generates a risk that vastly outweighs any potential yet to be defined and at best marginally fiduciary benefits or gains that may be generated from developing this site. On behalf of the Yakama Nation, I encourage you to consider this opposition to this proposal.
Thank you. Could you bring the microphone to your, Are there questions?
Should I start over?
Again, if you want. Diane?
Start that way. Mr. Shapiro and commissioners, thank you for having us. My name is Diane Barton. I'm the Water Quality Coordinator for the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. On behalf of the 4 member tribes of the Commission, the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs Reservation of Oregon, the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Yakama Nation, and the Nez Perce Tribe, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak and for recognizing the rights and interests of tribal governments in the West Hayden Island project by specifically including coordination and consultation with tribes in Section 7 of the draft intergovernmental agreement. Our tribes have worked hard to restore salmon and lamprey runs in the Columbia River Basin. We've had some great results and have made significant improvements in the salmon runs, but we are far from complete in our efforts. We are concerned that industrial development of West Hayden Island would pose a threat to our success. The lower Columbia River in the vicinity of West Hayden Island is used as a migratory pathway of anadromous adult salmon and lamprey as they move upstream to spawning grounds, and for juvenile fish that are moving downstream to the ocean. West Hayden Island itself provides important rearing habitat, which is extremely limited in the Columbia River Basin, especially in lower sections of the river. We are especially concerned about progress in regards to Pacific lamprey recovery. The sandy substrate of the lower Columbia River is an important habitat for Pacific lamprey and river lamprey, and these areas have been designated as special habitat areas because they support at-risk species. We appreciate that the proposed plan recognizes the significant ecological role of West Hayden Island's nearshore and shallow water areas by proposing development standards that require setbacks from the Columbia River. However, we feel that the intergovernmental agreement is too vague on where and when shallow water and floodplain mitigation will occur. In addition to our concerns about the potential impacts to vital fish habitat, we feel that the current plan inadequately addresses water quality issues and specifically the impact of industrial toxins on the river. For example, in what standards will the sewer facility improvements that are described in section 3.3 be made? The intergovernmental agreement merely requires upgrades to the level required at the time of development. But at the same time, the Port of Portland's vision for West Hayden Island promises to utilize the West Coast Technical Committee's sustainable design and construction guidelines and supports the principle of, quote, staying ahead of the curve, unquote, by implementing voluntary actions. We would suggest that the proposed plan to merely comply to current National Environmental Policy Act regulations and to current best management practices is not staying ahead of the curve. First, NEPA regulations contain unfortunate regulatory gaps regarding what are being called chemicals of emerging concern. And secondly, recent data on wastewater treatment plants and stormwater effluent that discharge into the Columbia River are showing chemicals including endocrine disruptors, pesticides, PAH, and metals that are not controlled by current best management practices. Exposure to toxic chemicals can have sublethal effects on fish, and uptake of these contaminants into fish can lead to tissue residues that have been linked to effects at the molecular, population, and species level. Source control techniques that are truly ahead of the curve can and should be specified and committed to in the proposed plan. To suggest a few, these techniques might include requirements that would eliminate zinc and other mobile toxics from roofing and other construction materials in the industrial and in the open source facilities. Rules that would require that the considerable trucking fleet described in this plan utilize copper-free brake pads, zinc-free tires, operating procedures that would ensure that the paints and pesticides do not contain copper or bioaccumulative toxins, and that cleaning products meet design for the environment specifications. A stormwater management plan that would include treatment for removal of contaminants as well as retention and infiltration requirements. Contractual obligations that would require the truck fleet operators to be liable for petroleum drips and leaks and to enforce diesel emission limitations. Although our tribes remain opposed to industrial development of West Hayden Island, we appreciate that the proposed plan calls for the establishment of a West Hayden Island district with its own set of environmental regulations. In the event that the proposal goes forward, we would ask that tribal concerns with individual development permit applications be addressed through active tribal participation in the West Hayden Island resource review process. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Thank you. Oh, pardon me. Yes, Karen?
So thank you for your testimony here tonight. I heard you say several different things about sewer, about shallow water, and also appreciative of the consultation model, which I think was important. And this may be a very big question, but I know due to time we won't have that ability. But a question sometimes I like to ask is, what would it take for you to feel like you could support this? Is there anything that we could do that would allow you to feel like you could support this?
Do you have an answer? As it stands right now, the tribal leadership that we have do not see any foreseeable actions that could be taken. And from what we've been told as technical staff is that the tribe is in opposition, period. We can't speak to any sort of mitigation or any sort of changes at this current time that would allow us to say we would be favorable at all.
Okay. So even with some of the things that were mentioned around sewer, shallow water, even if it does go through active tribal consultation at the design level, those things would not change anything?
The tribes that the commission represents
Yes,
still
I'm asking you.
are opposed to the proposed plan.
Okay,
Just talking in the eventual acceptance.
okay, thank you. Appreciate
Mike?
it.
Yeah, I'm really pleased that you brought up the floodplain issue, because as you probably know, initially there were no plans for any mitigation for floodplain loss. Can you elaborate a bit why that would be an important issue for the tribe?
The focus of the
And you also mentioned you're concerned about the potential location of floodplain mitigation, so I don't know if you want to expand on that.
well, the island itself is in such a unique area that mitigation ought to be in the river. And I know that that's difficult because the lack of area that would host such mitigation. The focus of the Intertribal Fish Commission is on fish habitat and the viability of fish populations. So those are the only mitigation plan. Those are the mitigation plans that we.
Any other questions?
I hope you'll provide us with written copies of your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you both again, very, very much. This time I'd like to ask Keith Levitt, Chris Hathaway, and Victor Vietz to come forward. Each of these gentlemen represents one aspect of the proposal we're considering. And I'd like to ask you all to keep your remarks to about 5 minutes. We're going to try to time it. And maybe I'll just ask you to go left to right. I'll do it next time, but.
Left and right. Your left?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Depends on whether you're ambidextrous. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I'm Keith Levitt, General Manager of Business Development and Properties for the Port of Portland. And we want to thank you very much for all the work that it's taken to get to this point in the process. And we also appreciate the work of the staff. This has been a 4 years plus really process, and it's exciting to see it moving into a more probably of a decision phase, and that's appropriate given all the study that's gone on. The port remains very excited about the opportunity with West Hayden Island. This is a unique, once-in-a-generation piece of property, over 800 acres. The opportunity to be able to preserve 500 acres in perpetuity as open space, enhance the environment through that, the ability to have job creation and really have a maritime future for this community, which is so much a part of our history on the 300 acres. And we, as we've talked about before in our testimony, we do think that the market is there long-term for marine industrial development on West Hayden Island, and we think that we actually are currently in a market window right now where projects could go forward, but we will probably be looking at the next roughly 10-year cycle for that as we continue to work through the development issues. The port looks at this property from the standpoint of the triple bottom line of sustainability, and our vision that we put forward through this process is one that we believe is as innovative as they get in the country for sustainable development. The environmental mitigation proposals that we have supported in the process, we believe do result in net ecosystem benefit, as well as allows for a financially feasible development. And so the two issues that I'll just summarize, we'll send in our, tonight we will deliver to you our more comprehensive comments. But the first one is one that I've talked to you about before, which is financial feasibility. Just the overall size of the package that is in front of you with the recommendation is one that runs right up against the issue of being able to have a market feasible development. And because the port doesn't have the capital that it takes to fund these projects in advance, we are going to have a lease structure with a private party ultimately to be able to capitalize, finance, and come up with the dollars that it takes to do the site prep work, as well as the mitigation that's envisioned in this proposal. As you'll recall, from a financial standpoint, roughly the site prep that we think is required and that I would say we're in agreement with city staff is roughly about a $60 million price tag. That's for fill to the site and all the projects that have to be brought to bear in order to move the site to a point where it's market ready. The mitigation price tag on the mitigation on the proposal that's in front of you is roughly about $80 million. So $140 million total for site prep and mitigation, and the latest port proposal that was probably right around that November timeframe was roughly $100 million for site prep and for mitigation. And so there's a pretty big gap that we're concerned about. And when you just look at it from the standpoint of per square foot industrial land value, the city's proposal is close to $12 per square foot. And we talked about the market for industrial land is about $6 per square foot. So we're about double the value of industrial land just on the cost side of the equation from the start. The port's proposal was right around $7 to $8 per square foot. So again, that just gives you a sense for the range that's between us. Our comments will get into more detail about particular mitigation measures, and I know floodplain is one of those issues that we've had. But from a business standpoint, and I'll close up here. From a business standpoint, it's really the overall size of the mitigation pie that we are most concerned about and its effect on the ability to ultimately enter into a market rate transaction. The other issue that I would ask you to consider is the issue of certainty. On the part of the premise for us entering into this process, set aside 500 acres, but then have more development certainty from a regulatory review by the city on the 300 acres. And we think that the proposal that's in front of you right now does not go far enough from a city standpoint in this area of certainty of regulatory review.
Thank you. Questions?
The port doesn't own 500.
Now I'd like to recognize
They don't
Vic.
own 500 acres, and it's.
Excuse me, sir.
Why do you say so?
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Victor,
Yeah,
you want to pull the microphone to your?
oh, I will. I'll do that if we can tone down the beeper. I don't want it to interrupt me too much, okay?
Very close.
I've seen my notes compared to my speaking partners here, and I'm a little sketchy. When I was reviewing the previous testimony before tonight, I realized that we have been through all of this before. And reading the testimony, it appears that not much has really changed. The topics are still the same. The issues are still undecided, and there is no certainty on the impact side or the mitigation side any more than there is on the port side of the equation here. First of all, let me say there's no need for the West Hayden Island Port project. The port itself has not been doing well in recent decades. With the exception of their Terminal 5 bulk mineral tenant, the port has been losing business for the last 32 years. Current tonnage is 1 million tons less than it was in 1981. 1 million out of 8 million. Grain tonnage is down about 500,000 tons since 1981. Containers have declined steadily for the last 18 years when the port was here saying they needed a new container terminal. Auto imports have grown, but at less than 0.5% a year for the last 32 years. The bulk terminal for marine bulk mineral, now is 50% of the port's business, tonnage-wise. With that exception, the port has gone nowhere. There is no specific documented need that Portland is trying to meet. There is no study on record now that says Portland is supposed to meet this need. The needs have been defined in terms of the lower Columbia River Basin. There are Midwest and Canadian products that want to move down the Columbia River, and there are Far East companies that want, and countries that want to import those products. But the allocation of that business to the ports, there's no rules on who gets to ship. And in the last few years, while the Port of Portland hasn't done anything, there have been modern new facilities built at other terminals on the Columbia River. In Longview, Kalama, they both built grain elevators. Business is going on, it's just not going on in Portland. And I don't know why that is. We have to ask the port why that is. Obviously, other people have found a way to finance their terminals. I have a feeling they're not as expensive. I mean, Vancouver has got shovel-ready ground over there, and we don't have shovel-ready ground over here by a long shot. So we have considerable ways to go in terms of proving our need. There are also many market risks that the port's up against. All the ports are up against them, including some that we've talked about before. The large post-Panamax ships are going to be unable to get up the river fully loaded if they're the deep draft design. They can get through the new Panama Canal, but they can't get up the river. And the Corps of Engineers says that the post-Panamax ships will dominate global shipping by the year 2030. And basically that means, the West Coast ports of Oakland, Seattle, Tacoma, British Columbia, and Southern California, they all can handle those ships. So what I'm envisioning is basically a system of ships that goes by and is bypassing the more locally oriented ports on the Columbia Basin, the Columbia River. I will skip to my closing remarks since the clock is not stopping on my behalf. It's not appropriate now to incorporate West Hayden Island. The port has no tenants willing to endure the time it's going to take to develop. The CRC project is still undecided and unfunded. We shouldn't be approving anything until we know the answer to that question. On the island, the mall is still under construction. We anticipate that the mall traffic is going to be a major factor on the island, and trying to get these trucks through them all is virtually impossible. And the port, lastly, is the main reason that this is not the time to incorporate, because as they say, they can't afford to develop. I don't know why they're all here, but if they can't afford to develop, they're asking for basically free public money from the state legislature to cover their costs, including costs of mitigation. So if they can't afford to do this, why are we all trying to wrestle with it?
Thank you, Victor. Thank you. Chris?
Hi, Chairman Shapiro and members of the Planning and Sustainability Commission. I'm Chris Hathaway. I'm with the Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about West Hayden Island. The Estuary Partnership has a long history with West Hayden Island, going back to the 1999 planning process, and I've been serving on the various committees over the last 5 years. First off, I'd like to thank you guys for your approach to West Hayden Island. During the November 2012 hearings, you heard from me and many others that the planning and the decision-making process had really fallen apart. And you guys did the right thing. You took a step back, understood the complexity and the importance of the decision, and recognized the ecological significance of West Hayden Island. You established a realistic schedule, worked to understand the issues, and gave excellent direction to city staff, and they've followed through for you. I think the new IGA is improved, and there are a number of elements that we like within that. Yet the zoning code and the IGA package still falls short on a number of key environmental points important to the estuary partnership in the region. Our management plan, completed in 1999, updated in 2011, contains 17 actions that we're implementing to address degradation and contamination in the Lower Columbia River. And our comments are really grounded in that management plan. The first key point is that the environmental mitigation does not achieve a net increase in ecosystem function. That was the first core value going way back 5 years to the West Hayden Island Community Working Group, and it's followed through the City Council resolution to this day. Simply put, these Columbia River main stem islands that are intact are basically irreplaceable. Even if the environmental mitigation achieved a net increase, it would take decades before that mitigation matures to the point that it's providing the ecological functions that they do today on West Hayden Island. I think given that, it's critically important that the city follow through on its net increase goal, and we think there's 2 areas to focus with regard to that. One is the forest mitigation. For some reason in the current draft, the forest mitigation goal dropped from 110% to 101%, and the maintenance period from 100 to 30 years. First, 101% is a semantic net increase. It's not a measurable or meaningful one. And we're really unclear in terms of what was the rationale to change that mitigation target, particularly given the difficulty and uncertainty associated with replacing the functions of a 150-year-old complex high-performing forest. Floodplain impacts are another area for improvement. I think it's a great improvement that floodplain impacts are even in this IGA, and you guys should be commended for that. The ecological impacts of developing 300 acres within the Columbia River floodplain would be significant and would have been really disingenuous to not address that. The current project is a little bit insufficient, though. Rivers must engage with their floodplains on a regular basis, and the current project calls for the river to engage with that floodplain project every 100 years. An acceptable project would be to restore a 2-year flood event to 200 acres of land. And there's a strong rationale for that 2-year flood. It's the 2-year flood on the Columbia River provides the geomorphic and habitat forming processes necessary to create valuable functioning habitat, particularly during the February to July high water period, so critical to outmigrating salmonids. And it's also the standard that was developed by regional scientists and is used currently by the Bonneville Power Administration in their mitigation program. So it has a history and there's kind of a standard there to it. Another key point is that the IGA does not require mitigation on West Hayden Island. We believe an accepted mitigation protocol nearly always calls for on-site mitigation, and that there's plenty of room on West Hayden Island to do some on-site mitigation. If off-site mitigation is necessary, we believe that the mitigation geography should conform to the hydrogeomorphic reaches F and G and the Columbia River Estuary Ecosystem Classification System. Your staff can tell you about that. It's basically the newest science in terms of how to break the river up into reaches. We don't believe that environmental mitigation costs should be shifted to external sources. Funding to get the required mitigation should be paid for by the developing agency and its development partner and should not come at the expense of taxpayers and other projects and organizations working to restore the Lower Columbia River and natural areas. And I think finally, most importantly, mitigation remains uncertain. The mitigation requirements should not be open to future negotiation or reprioritization and should not be based on the ability to attract external funds. Provisions such as those in Section 9 erode public confidence in the port and the city and marginalize the importance of environmental mitigation. We also encourage the city to stand strong on the project's environmental mitigation requirements. The environment shouldn't be protected only when it's economically feasible, and the environment shouldn't be bargained away.
Well, you did it right on the money. Thank you. Chris?
Chris, I have a question for you, going to the who pays point. You know, I could appreciate perhaps why you wouldn't want West Hayden Island mitigation to compete with other mitigation grant funding sources for other projects. But we fund economic development through a variety of methods. You know, I'm thinking specifically of Connect Oregon as an example that's helped pay for port facilities all around the state. It sounded like you felt like that kind of investment would be inappropriate in West Hayden Island, and I don't quite get that. If we use economic development dollars to make this project possible and some of that flows into mitigation, why is that not a good thing?
Well, I think I was specifically talking about the environmental mitigation part of it. But I think any sort of funding that is, I mean, there's a limited pot of money, right? And there's especially a limited pot of money for natural resource restoration. And any money that is taken from another potential project, you know, to do mitigation work, I think, you know, doesn't provide the long-term and the more comprehensive restoration that is necessary.
Could I add a bit to that?
Sure.
One of the
You want to use the microphone?
It seems that one of the things that we need is the port to explain to us what economic value they're really bringing, and that's what justifies the public investment. And right now, with Midwest and Canadian, right now. With,
There you go.
I'm sorry. I'll get out of the way here in a minute. Yeah. With products coming from the Midwest and from Canada going overseas, just doing a pass-through here in Portland with no local industry involved, the ports it keeps touting this traded sector business that they are so good at promoting and so good for the economics of the state. But we're not trucking anything anywhere. We're not manufacturing anything. We're not warehousing it. We're not distributing it. Those are the elements that go into the traded sector market economy. It just doesn't seem like this is the
Right.
best.
And I'm not disputing that that's an important question. The point I was trying to get to here is there's, you know, I kind of think of this as a two-step process. There's a price tag to get the mitigation right, and then there's an economic development question that once we have the price tag, does it make sense for the community to make that investment to make it happen? And where I was getting confused on Chris's point is it seems strange to me in that evaluation process to say we can only use certain colors of money when it comes time to pay the bill. I'm more inclined to look at it in the big picture and you know, balance both sides of those equation, and the colors of money are a little bit less important to me, and that's what I was trying to say, not that we don't need to make that calculation.
Don?
Yeah, Chris, I'm interested in the floodplain. You mentioned that we should be addressing the 2-year flood event. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me so I learn about it?
Well, that's the standard that we do a lot of work for the Bonneville Power Administration, and they're doing a lot of mitigation work for their the federal Columbia River hydropower system, obviously, and have been for a long time. They've established that as kind of the standard by which they do some evaluations of the projects that they'll fund. And essentially what they're using that as kind of a proxy, if you will, for inundation, periods of inundation between January and July for when juvenile salmon are swimming down the river and need that off-channel refuge and rearing habitat. The Columbia River is a very complicated system, tidally influenced, the river flow, very regulated and so forth. And so they've come to that 2-year flood event as a measuring tool, if you will, to be able to kind of compare projects in different geographical areas.
Yeah. So it gives them kind of their own standard.
Yeah, a little bit of a baseline that they can measure things against.
Thanks, Chris.
Mike?
Don, thank you for asking that question. Yeah, I think we're going to need some kind of visual representation of what's being discussed because, I mean, if you can imagine the land looks like this, only this part of it is flooded every 100 years. This is the critical part down here, every 2, 5, 10 years. And if you're going to get the full ecological function of that floodplain, you've got to do it on a 2, 5, 10, 30-year basis, not what floods every 100 years. And by the way, you all remember, I'm sure, in 1996, West Hayden Island was totally inundated, as was much of the region.
Yeah, and I asked the question about, I really wanted to understand, does a 2-year event impact shallow water habitat? Does a 2-year event impact the shoreline, where the primary feeding sources are for fish, I would imagine? And is that accurate? It does, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that's kind of the flood event that kind of drives the processes in part. It happens often enough that it's kind of continuing to drive habitat forming processes.
Okay, thanks.
And another point to remember too is that this is a tidally influenced river, and the Columbia River is at Hayden Island, it's tidally influenced. So, depending on the floodplain project, it would be great if it was, impacted on a twice daily basis, like lots of projects are.
Chris, BPA requires this of themselves and their projects that they're engaged in. Are there other agencies that have the same requirement that you need to get a permit from?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean,
Okay.
they're funding the majority of the restoration work on the lower Columbia River, and they have their particular needs that they need to meet, and they've come up with this as their one of their tools. They have other criteria as well.
Thank you.
Mike?
And very quick follow-up. Last time you were here, you were in the back of the room and you got a head nod. And the question I asked was, LCREP does a lot of the sort of floodplain work that we're talking about, correct? And you've got experience in one of the things we're talking about is potentially breaching levees to accomplish that floodplain restoration. And it's not like magic. It's not like people don't know how to do that work.
Yeah, it's a very, very common accepted practice in the lower Columbia River, and it's the type of project, again, that the Bonneville is most interested in because it does get those floodwaters back into these areas that are providing the critical habitat for juvenile salmon.
Karen. I was looking at Susan.
I just want to know, as a point of process, since we're kind of winding down on the hearings, if there's an opportunity to have the port give their comments as to the economic development, because he's saying that there isn't any, but this gentleman is saying there is. And so as we're asking questions here, is the port going to have a chance to answer that question, or should I ask him now?
Well, you can, but there's a
I
whole
get that,
bookload of
but you know,
their.
we're kind of listening to people tonight, so I want to hear the whole story.
I can't speak for Keith or the port, but I believe there's a bookload of their position here that pretty much answers a lot of what I believe these gentlemen are contesting in terms of economic prognosis and so forth. But specifically, I have a kind of a curiosity about the price that the city and the port are wrangling over square footage. It's about $5 a square foot apart. Is that about right?
Yeah, what I had said was that the city's proposal is getting close to about $12 per square foot in cost, and the port's last proposal was getting closer to $8 per square. So there's a little over a $4 per square foot distance.
Okay. Well, I want to be sensitive to your question. Is there anything you want to respond to here tonight?
I appreciate the question. We would just disagree. I think on the economics, there's a lot of information in your throughout this process, studies that were done that demonstrated a good economic benefit here, good jobs, and so we'll stand on that.
Yes, Gary.
Just a quick clarifying question. The $12 per square foot in the city's proposal, are you talking about the April 9th plan draft and the associated IGA?
That's correct. The latest proposal.
Any other questions of our distinguished first guests? And there are many waiting. Thank you all very much. We're now going to call for testimony as it's been given me here. Again, I want to stress the 3-minute rule, if I may, and you're all welcome to do that. Yeah. Oh, okay. Hang on. A little precedent here in who gets to go first.
No, just if anyone.
Oh. Well, I don't see any. Does anybody here have young children that have to leave? That would bring you to the microphone first. It'd be a good time to produce a child, I guess.
And we have no way of verifying.
That's a whole other, I'll be quiet. It's a whole other hearing, folks. You're not in the right place for that one. Okay. So I've been told that we are at 55 people who ought to be heard, and we're going to terminate this thing at 9 o'clock sharp. We can just about get everybody in if everybody respects that 3-minute rule. So with that in mind, and with a lot of anticipation that we want to hear from all of you, and we're sincerely interested in your comments, let me call you up 3 at a time. Tim Heltzik, am I saying that right, Tim? Robert Bernstein, Beverly Bourne.
And Mr. Chair, if I could ask presenters to do a favor, I'm pretty hard of hearing, and if you can make sure that you get the mic right in front of you and you're speaking into it, that really helps me out. So thank you.
Is this on? Yeah. Good evening. My name is Tim Helzer. I'm a resident of Hayden Island and a professor of business management. For the last 10 years, I've researched the port's plan for West Hayden Island, especially this April 9th report, as an investment prospectus. Imagine, if you will, that you wanted to invest some of your retirement funds in this project. First, this prospectus doesn't tell you what specific marine services will generate a profit, because there are no actual customers worldwide who need or want this marine terminal now or ever. Most development costs are vague for an investment prospectus. Many are incomplete, and some are missing altogether. They should include the full cost of compensation for, 1, the port's destruction of high-value natural wildlife habitat. Number 2, the port's cut and fill floodplain restoration. Number 3, the port's pollution of the air, water, and general livability of the surrounding communities. And number 4, the port's trucks clogging our local bridge and street systems. But don't expect a return on your investment right away. Your money goes for paying to fix these very costly problems this project creates. What's more, the port's estimate total project costs are significantly higher, believe it or not, than the city's, and the city has worked hard to lowball this projection. Without any market demand, but extensive mitigation expense, incomplete and inaccurate financial analysis, very doubtful job creation, and other regional benefits, the port does project a possible return on your investment to come in about 40 years. The port has so little confidence in this project that it has aggressively lobbied Salem to shift most of these future development costs onto city, state, and federal taxpayers. And when the municipal bonds are used here, the project doesn't generate enough revenue to pay them off in 40 years, the city of Portland and the state of Oregon will be required to pay them off plus interest. After your careful review of this latest port investment prospectus, I'd like to see a show of hands of who might be interested in putting some of your retirement money into this project. Seeing none, I would hope that you would not recommend to the City Council that they authorize the destruction of hundreds of acres of high-value wildlife habitat, compromise community health, if you're not interested in investing it in yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I don't, I think it's fair to have applause, please, please. Ms. Bookin? I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
That's okay. Good evening. I'm Beverly Bookin, principal of the Bookin Group LLC at 813 Southwest Alder Street, Suite 320, Portland 97205. I offer my perspective based on over 30 years' experience as a land use planner, including advocacy for an adequate supply of land to support our region's economic future. My comments are as follows. 1, a recommendation for approval laden with overly costly conditions of approval is tantamount to a denial. The port's initial estimate was that it would require approximately $38 million in mitigation. Now, in BPS's third draft of the IGA, the range is between 69 and 84 million, the midpoint of which is more than double the initial estimate. The port is on record as noting that the cost of development of this marine terminal should not exceed reasonable expectations of financial return. The proposed mitigation package breaks the bank here without apparently recognizing or balancing the regional economic benefits. 2, Oregon land use law requires that conditions of approval have reasonable nexus to the development and that the mitigation is roughly proportional to the impacts and extent of the actual impacts, per the U.S. Supreme Court decision Dolan v. Tigard. For example, the mitigation package includes requiring 1,030 acres of environmental restoration to offset 130 acres of disturbance, a ratio of nearly 8-to-1. This is possible grounds for a Dolan challenge. Finally, Portland is a regional partner obligated to help Metro find a 20-year supply of industrial land. If a marine terminal is a no-go at this location because of the lack of financial feasibility, Metro is obligated to fulfill this need elsewhere. However, water-dependent industrial land is by definition must be adjacent to water, so there are no sites in, say, Damascus or South Hillsborough. And the region needs more ocean-accessible shipping facilities with a deep water draft only available in the Columbia River west of the I-5 bridge. Thus, by not approving the more balanced package, the City of Portland may be failing to meet its regional obligations. Thank you.
Hey, Ms. Bookin.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Robert Bernstein, longtime resident of Southeast Portland. So on one hand, there's Hayden Island. There's deer, coyotes, eagles, falcons, some monad habitat, 100-year-old ash trees, that didn't even get counted in the mitigation assessment. And then you have the Port of Portland. And I came up with an old line from an Ella Fitzgerald song, handful gimme, mouthful of much obliged. And that's the Port of Portland. They're offering us nothing. They're offering us pie in the sky, quote, guarantees of jobs that they're selling. And they have the chutzpah to go down to Salem to stick us with the tab, me, the taxpayers, and I don't think this will fly with the citizens of Portland, to stick us with the tab if it goes south on them. And Hayden Island will never be rightfully mitigated. It'll be done piecemeal, as I said last time. Your question, Chris, I used to catch big salmon in steelhead. The farther big fish would get away from me, the less my odds of getting it done. Okay? Once you start letting money get farther away and more hands have to come up with it, I just think it's a whole nother ball game. I mean, I wouldn't play poker with somebody who doesn't have their own ante up on the table. The Port of Portland is not willing to ante up its own money, but they want to play in the freaking game. I would walk away from a game like this. My way of viewing this is that they're giving us bupkis. Bupkis is Yiddish. Do you happen to know what bupkis actually is?
Yes, I do. But
Yeah. It's goat droppings. That's what bupkis is.
I had to testify tonight.
They don't want to add their own money to the pot. They want to stick us as the bottom end rescuers. And I see you as civil servants, and I don't see you as police firemen. I'm not going to ask you to rush into burning buildings or anything. But you have a charge to make the best deal for me and the other citizens of Portland. This falls so far short that I would have left the table a long time ago. This is your job. You don't have the ability to do that, unfortunately. But I do hope that you will look very carefully, as some of you have, I'm less sure that some of you have, and come up with a better deal than this or leave it undone, because this stinks to high heaven.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Any questions of these people? Chris, hang on a sec.
a quick one for Bev. So your central thesis is that the price is too high, right? So is it that achieving 100% or 101% or 110% ecosystem function is an unreasonable objective, or that the estimates to achieve that are too high?
I think you take a step back. First of all, many of the issues that have been discussed here as environmental problems may already be existing, as opposed to really associated with 130 acres of development of actual disturbance. And so you cannot, under Oregon land use law, and I imagine federal law as well, although I'm not a land use attorney, that you can't simply have a development come in and be responsible for fixing every possible environmental shortcoming in this portion of the Columbia River. And so the first thing that has to be, and I'm not an expert on the specifics of Hayden Island, but from a theoretical standpoint, is what is, under Dolan, what is really related significantly and to the extent and nature of the 130 acres of impact. When you establish that, then you need to look at the price tag. But my basic premise is that I'm not sure that all of the environmental mitigation that's hung on this Christmas tree is necessarily directly attributable to Hayden, to the port facility. And that is really, I think, an important issue legally, and I think it may lead to further legal action on the part of the port if in fact, the city doesn't do a good job of demonstrating Dolan sufficiency.
Any other questions? Thank you all very much. Next three are Pamela Treese, Stephen Karlik, am I saying, or Stephen? Stefan, pardon me, Stefan Karlik, and Stefan Carley and Lucinda Karlik. Carley and Karlik? Oh, you must be.
That's Stefan and Lucinda.
Yeah, oh, okay. Welcome to the Karliks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pam Treese. I'm the Executive Director of Westside Economic Alliance. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you this evening. Westside Economic Alliance is an advocacy organization that represents both public and private members from Washington County and the west side of Clackamas County. We are in support of the annexation of West Hayden Island, of the West Hayden Island site for the following reasons. More than 105 Washington County companies ship freight through the Port of Portland facilities. We want to ensure the overall financial viability of the port as we continue to grow our partnership. West Hayden Island is a critical asset to the region's export strategy, a strategy that has been embraced by our local leaders and our businesses. Our region is 12th in the top 100 cities for global trade, and we are third for the fastest growth of exports. Experts tell us that an extremely high percentage of our consumers live outside of the U.S. We can clearly see that our economic future requires a strong commitment to accommodate the increase in commodity movement, some of which will be through West Hayden Island. Because we are an income tax-dependent state, it is only through growth in jobs or personal income that we can generate enough revenue for critical social services, including education. Regionally, more than 143,000 jobs are related to trade. Future West Hayden Island terminal development and the jobs the terminal creates are estimated to generate annual personal income of $198 to $240 million with annual state and local taxes of $18 to $30 million. That's a large increase to the tax base that would go toward teachers, firefighters, police, and other social services. The annexation and zoning of West Hayden Island is also important to our region's industrial land supply. This is the only marine industrial site available for deep draft navigation, as was mentioned earlier. Metro has designated 422 acres of West Hayden Island for industrial development in the 2010 Metro Urban Growth Report. If this annexation does not happen, Metro will be required to reevaluate the urban growth boundary and designate additional expansion areas for marine industrial development. There is no other property to replace it. Marine industrial land is simply not fungible. Your commission has the unique opportunity to set our path for the region's future. Westside Economic Alliance believes it is crucial that you make a balanced recommendation on annexation, zoning, and associated mitigation. Your actions reach beyond Portland. We urge the Planning and Sustainability Commission to consider these comments and narrow the gap between the Port of Portland proposal and the amended proposed draft that is currently under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Treese. Cinda, you want to go next? Oh, Stefan goes next.
Good afternoon. Thank you for listening to our comments today. My name, for the record, is Stefan Karlik. I'm a board member of the Hayden Island Manufactured Home Community, Hayden Island Livability Project, and High Noon. When a private corporation seeks to expand, it delivers a comprehensive business plan outlining the need, cost, product, and timeline. The port has done none of this. The port threw out some generalities without the precise information needed. Eric and Rachel have done an amazing job of trying to put a sound business plan together. Unfortunately, all the unknowns and generalities have worked against them to the point that it is not a feasible business opportunity. If it was, private industry would be knocking on the door day and night to be involved. Build it and they will come is for dreamers and movies. Build a port on West Hayden Island and it will be a film on nightmares of failure and the destruction of the Emerald of Portland and the laying waste of the Hayden Island manufactured home community. The port has stated that it cannot afford to move forward with the rising cost of mitigation. Staff and commissioners have juggled to bring the costs down. This is not the expected result of a multi-million-dollar venture. This reflects badly on the port and gives the appearance that it is a project that they do not fully believe in, financially or otherwise. Collaborative national and international information for the need has not been offered. Staff has stated that several PSC meetings and numerous stakeholder meetings at the port has consulted with its experts and deemed that a new facility is needed. If the same experts were consulted for the failed coal terminal in the 90s when millions of dollars were lost, and the need for another runway PDX, possibility of hundreds of millions of dollars lost, the Terminal 6 build and operation that the port finally had to lease out to a foreign operator because, in the words of the port, they were hemorrhaging money and continue to this day to bribe the operators and shipping companies to the tune of millions of dollars to continue. The port's history shows that they have been inept in international dealings. They stated at the PSC meeting that they were not able to lease the hundreds of acres currently available due to circumstances beyond their control. All the while, the city and state coffers suffer due to lack of taxes being paid. The port has an agreement that it not pay property taxes on land it owns until it is developed and or leased. While providing information to stakeholders and the commissioners, they neglected to inform us that the port was in Salem trying to pass SB 246 to pass 50% of the development costs onto the taxpayer. The port wants to pay PDX. They operate under the same banner, $3 million plus for mitigation on Government Island, which is too far away to really be of any help on Hayden Island residents. I offered in testimony the studies, papers, and expert opinions from the world-renowned experts and US officials that not only prove there is no need for port expansion, but no need through 2050 for export expansion. The health and safety of the residents should be the major concern of government officials, elected, appointed, and volunteers. If they are not capable of making the best decision in this regard, they should pass on that responsibility to those that can and will. For too long, we have endured we the government, for the government, and by the government. We fully expect and demand that we the people, for the people, and by the people be restored to its full intent in the Declaration of Independence.
Thank you. Cinda?
Hi, my name's Lucinda Carlick. I'm the president of Hayden Island Livability Project, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the residents of Hayden Island Manufactured Home Park. We are against industrialization of West Hayden Island, the Emerald of Portland, as we call it, for many reasons. The port has not proven a use for a new port and now is trying to push the cost onto the taxpayers with SB 246. If built, it will compromise the liability of the Hayden Island manufactured home community. The port suggests to insulate and put in new windows. Are they going to provide oxygen and tents for residents daring to venture outside of the safety of their safety capsules? Most of these homes in the park, over 60%, are pre-HUD homes that cannot be fixed to the standards that would need be. And people do like to go outside from time to time. We have many elderly residents in our community. They'll have a problem getting to and from the mall, the store, the pharmacy, with the traffic increase. I am for Oregon. Is Oregon for me? If this annexation passes, we will be moving our home out of the park and many will follow. No amount of mitigation will be sufficient to restore our way of life, our homes, or our health. I am for Oregon. Is Oregon for me? It would make more sense to invest in the existing infrastructure to really proclaim Portland and Hayden Island a destination resort beyond compare. Hayden Island is willing to work for you. Are you willing to work for Hayden Island? It would help residents boost employment and local taxes and no HIA required. I'm for Oregon. Is Oregon for me? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions of these folks? Thank you. David Red Thunder, Lori Wall, and Kevin Flanagan.
I would like to submit this.
Sure.
I'm sorry I couldn't make more copies, but funding.
We'll pass it around.
And it covers all the questions you've already been asked.
David?
Hi, I'm David Red Thunder. I'm a resident of Hayden Island going on 5 years. I am also a member of HILP, second member at large. I was here a year ago, and I told you guys there was an eagle's nest on the island that was being neglected, and now there's 2 eagle's nests on the island. And it really bothers me is that we have to, I go to Smith and Bybee Lakes, and there it sits, black-tailed deer, eagle's nest. One of the American cities, the only American cities that have this kind of animal life so close to the city, and it's like, it's over here. And so we have to directly approach the problem. When you guys came to the island, you said that they handle the treaties in stages, because I'm wondering, how come you guys had this on the board and never said a word? And so anyways, I noticed that you get to NARA, where we teach our children. And I looked in the proposal book, and there was nothing said about what the discussion came of. And so someone asked the question over here is, do you oppose it? I mean, I don't know. I go there every day out there, and it's like I call people because there was hunting. Every year there's hunting on there. So I called Susan Barnes, and it seems like she actually tried to get trespassing charges on me. And the island got together, and they honored me for my preservation, which was great. And so now I walk back there back and forth. But I'm finding that for Oregon State, anything that has to do with the Oregon agency doesn't want to look at Hayden Island because they have to maintain the animals and creatures there. It seems like the David Lehan from the United States Fish and Game, he's more interested to help me. And so, anyways, it's just 3 minutes compared to 30 hours of scenarios of talking about our future. And it's like the animals are here and the signs are all around them. And it just seems like I hope we don't be here next year with this 3-minute testimony with another 35 more hours with Eric and his team. But what's really bothers me is that as we were working with Mayor Sam Adams, it seemed like he was opposed against it. Well, then it seems the first time in 70 years, our elect took probably the most important thing for Hayden Island, maybe Oregon, and caused a train wreck. And I'm lost. But what better people, with Eric and his team, to dig through this and cause more time? Because I believe that they're just preparing this land to drop more dredge on it. There's already 55,000 cubic yards of dredge spoils on there. And I know as soon as these eagles fly the nest, they want to put more dredge spoils. There's nowhere to put this. And it's like, we have to recognize this as all the creatures that are on it, or in 10 years, there's not going to be anything left. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Lori is before me.
Oh, pardon? Will you? Yeah.
Planning and Sustainability Commission. My name's Lori Wall. I'm a land use planner. My address is 7904 Southwest 4th Avenue. I will be addressing the recreation mitigation issues this evening. I represent Inland Sea Maritime Group, LLC, whose president, Kevin Flanagan, is sitting next to me. Our draft concept plan for a public park with a motorized and non-motorized public boat ramp is supported by numerous interest groups and individuals associated with Hayden Island. This support is shown in the city's record on the matter. The list of advocates for the concept plan continues to grow. The proposed location, immediately east of the railroad tracks on the Columbia River, is ideal. It is aesthetically pleasing, the boat ramp is not in the river's current, and the park would serve as a gateway to the port's property. The former Thunderbird site is not an option due to the Columbia River crossings stormwater facilities requirements. This is a great opportunity for the city and the port to address the needs of Hayden Island's water and boat-oriented community, including the fact that there's a serious lack of access for boaters to the Columbia River. The park-deficient status of the community would be addressed, and the concerns of the local businesses would be as well. For example, Schooner Creek Boat Works, which is adjacent to the proposed park, would be able to launch the 60-foot long by 40-foot wide catamarans that they build on the proposed ramp. The port's exemption from the balanced cut-fill rule for the huge amount of fill they proposed on West Hayden Island may be an issue for us. We are directly upriver and do not want flood levels to increase on our property. We ask for your support of the public park with a public boat ramp, a 3-acre park, a site size that has been identified in the city's April 9th, 2013 draft is not adequate. Hayden Island residents and businesses deserve more to mitigate for the port's proposed annexation and development. Steps to advance our concept plan need to happen sooner rather than later. Not moving the Hayden Island Drive alignment now will prevent our proposed option in the future. The opportunity should not be missed. Thank you. I'd be glad to answer any questions. And Kevin can too.
Kevin?
Thank you. My name is Kevin Flanagan. I'm the manager of Inland Sea Maritime Group. We own the property at 3255 North Hayden Island Drive on Hayden Island. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you again. I do support the annexation of the property for the port's marine terminal development, but I'd like to see increased recreational mitigations for the residents of Hayden Island and Portland at large. As you know, access to the Columbia River is highly limited, especially on Hayden Island. You have to be owner of riverfront property to actually get to the water from the island. The island is populated with very many businesses that are boat-related, water-related, but to get those boats into the water, they have to leave the island, go all the way up to the airport, to 33rd, which is the nearest boat ramp. As you've seen in the testimony, Oregon State Marine Board wrote a letter recognizing that there is a need in this area for increased motorized boat access to the Columbia River, that of all the 5 or 6 ramps existing, oftentimes they're completely full during the summer months, and there's plenty of room on the river for more boaters, but the access is limited. This development offers softscape walkways throughout portions of the open space on Hayden Island for a limited number of people. But really the primary access to the island will be by boat. And yet there's very limited ways to get a boat in the water and get to the island. A boat ramp at this location would also help public safety. I've spoken to the River Patrol, and they would be in favor of a ramp in this location because of the time it takes for them, who are located at 33rd, to respond to anything at Kelly Point, where there have been drownings, as you know, and other portions of the river. The proposed ramp would go into Canoe Bay, which I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's a man-made bay on the river, and it would allow the ramp to be out of the current, which is an important part for a boat ramp. And this is the only place on Hayden Island where such a thing exists. But to have this plan come into fruition, Hayden Island Drive would have to be relocated along that portion where it enters into the port property to allow sufficient parking for the boat ramp. And that's why we're asking you to consider putting this in the plan now, because if it's not, this opportunity will be lost. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Questions? Karen?
Yeah, so I was curious, you mentioned something about a concept plan that you had for this recreational development. Has the concept plan, where did that land? Who got to see that?
We have actually submitted that plan to the Planning and Sustainability Commission through a letter from my attorney, John Pink's staff, and that should be in your record. It gives a basic outline of where the parking and boat ramp would take place. It would be directly east of the train bridge, which is where you're envisioning the 3-acre park. Mm-hmm. But this would increase the area to about 6 acres and allow for the motorized boat ramp as well as the park and access to the port's trails from there.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we had it. I apologize if I have seen it and I'm just not remembering.
I know you have a lot of material.
Chris, then Don.
So just to clarify, so I understand this correctly, so you're proposing a larger park site, and would that also require moving the alignment of North Hayden Island Drive to something other than what's in the current draft of the plan?
Yes, that's correct. The entrance into the West Hayden Island and the portion there where it crosses under the train bridge would be realigned slightly to the south to allow for a greater parking area. And the 3 property owners that would be affected have all indicated that they're willing to work on this.
Don?
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused now. Do you own the site currently? Is your business there?
I own the property where Schooner Creek Boat Works resides, and there's a vacant lot there that I own. My adjacent neighbor is Mike Gray, who's a willing seller, as well as across Hayden Island is Jim Liston, who's also indicated willingness to sell. So this is a doable option.
Okay, so between the 3 of you, you own the property where this park would go?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Kat, pardon me.
Just a quick question. It seems that the proposal to put a motorized boat launch in that location is going to perhaps even more so increase traffic along West Hayden Island Drive than what's being proposed maybe by the port. And so have you had a chance to talk to the neighbors? Is there concern about that or conversations?
I have not. I did, when I was last here, recommend that an additional bridge be place, not only for the port project, but for all users of Hayden Island, and I continue to call for that.
May I just say, too, that we've had nobody speak or talk to us and say that they're opposed to this park concept.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next group is Bob Salinger, Pia Welsh, and Jody Parker. Pull the mic really close so that people can hear. I think it's hard if you don't.
Good evening. My name is Bob Salinger. I'm the Conservation Director for the Portland Audubon Society. First off, I want to thank the Planning Commission for their work over the last several months. I think you've improved the process dramatically. It's been more deliberative and well-paced, and I think as a result, the process and the product is better. We still have very significant concerns, but we really appreciate what you've done. I want to start with a quote from the draft comprehensive plan that I think is pertinent tonight. Page 1-3. Portland has a long history of community involvement and that found strength and power in the 1970s and forms the backbone of today's neighborhood system. Among other accomplishments, neighborhood activists were critical to the development of Waterfront Park and stopping the Mount Hood Freeway. Their work was and is important in creating a walkable, beautiful, and transit-rich city that Portland knows today. We look back with fondness. We look forward with blinders. We hope you'll exercise the same wisdom and courage that your predecessors exercised when they were willing to step back and rethink old ideas that no longer made sense. This project has been on the books for a long time. That's part of the justification for going forward. It's more of a justification for taking a hard look and reconsidering. There's a reason it hasn't been able to move out of this stage, and that's because it doesn't make sense. Proponents of this plan hide behind our land use planning system, specifically Goal 9. They argue that we must continually find a supply of new industrial land, even though we are landlocked, even though it means degrading our communities and our environment, even if it means tripling air toxics to 55 times the state benchmarks, even if it means destroying an irreplaceable natural area, and this is an irreplaceable natural area. However, our land use planning system wasn't meant to be a straitjacket. It was meant to facilitate thoughtful, creative planning. Those who argue that Goal 9 makes us do this miss the point. The issue of interport cooperation has not been addressed. It's been shelved. The city decided that it was too difficult, no one wanted to do it, and so we should just move on. In addition, it hasn't really been done that many times elsewhere, but there is no place in the United States that calls out more strongly for interport collaboration and cooperation than the Columbia River ports. Ports that are failing, ports that are turning to coal to fill vacant land, ports that are competing with each other and making inefficient use of the land base. We should not develop Hayden Island while that issue remains unresolved. We submitted extensive comments. We hope you'll take a look at them. I want to highlight a few things here. First, we are, is that the buzzer?
No.
Yeah. Oh. I want my minutes back.
No.
Okay.
You're right there. You're on the yellow.
First, we are concerned about the floodplains. We think it needs to be more specific. It needs to look at the 10-year and 30-year. Second, we're very concerned about the intergovernmental agreement, sections 9.4, 9.5, and 9.6. The community, which allows the port to shift costs to third parties, including the taxpayer, and if those funding sources don't come through, to either renegotiate or abandon the mitigation altogether. Under these circumstances, there's no reason to think that the mitigation will ever occur. The mitigation contained in this plan is nothing more than an aspiration, a mirage. All of the risk is on the side of the public. All of the burden is on the side of the public. All the certainty is on the side of the port. Even as the port promises that this project is going to bring great wealth to our community, it tells us that it can't afford to mitigate for the direct impacts of the project on the community and the environment. And the mitigation that is proposed is directly proportional to the impacts that will occur. There's a long record of how we got to this point. The port has stiff-armed the community for the 15 years that I've been involved. They've never brought forward a credible mitigation package. They've never brought forward any mitigation package. And they're arguing today that this one is too big. If they can't afford to do it right, they should not do it at all. This is your Mount Hood Freeway. We urge you to not go forward with annexation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, I defer to the young lady.
Good evening, and thank you for your time.
My name is Pia Welch, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Portland Freight Committee. I'm also a member of the Network Policy Expert Group and Industrial Land and Watershed Subcommittee for the Comprehensive Plan. And originally, I was not a proponent of the West Hayden Island annexation. However, during the time I have spent at the Network PEG meetings, I've learned quite a bit about industrial land for our area, about the complications of industrial land having environmental overlays, to the projected shortfall of industrial land for our region and what that means for an increasing population, to the need of coming together in a suitable fashion to compromise industrial environmental needs as we need to continue to go forward competing globally. Equity is an important issue, and as I spend time in meetings, the connection between equity and family wage jobs is not yet made in these meetings. When I learn about advanced manufacturing and its economic importance in our region, equity is brought up because there are family wage jobs that are associated with this particular manufacturing. When West Hayden Island and other projects are brought up, equity comes up because, again, family wage jobs are a possibility with these projects. Mitigation is a word that comes up quite frequently for industrial land and other projects and properties. Yet mitigation is not a word that is used for people. If West Hayden Island is not developed, let's mitigate. Fully recognize that the regional benefit of an estimated 2,300 to 4,000 jobs are not going to occur. So when we are in our next PEG meetings in 20 years, we will know the background of the decisions that we have made affecting our city. Thanks again for your time and consideration on this matter.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us in here to speak this evening. I'm not sure if Sir, Madam, Commissioners, elected officials. My name is Jody Getzlow Parker. I head up Columbia Pacific Building Trades. We're a coalition of labor unions that bind together to build projects. I won't go into the wherewithal, all the trades, but I'll just kind of start reading my printed literature here. My concerns are with the city's current approach to the West Hayden Island. We've counted the island as prime industrial land suitable for development, and now with the set-asides, the 500 acres out of the 800 for natural areas, leaving only 300 for job creation. And that's just the beginning. I'm concerned about the layers that we just keep applying and applying to, essentially we call it kicking the can down the road, which is a great game if you're 10, but if you're 50, not fun. There is a great need for balance here. I've said that before in many, many other opportunities to speak to work sessions, to you guys. We do need to balance our environment with our local community needs. The port sounds like they've offered a way to address every issue that they can. And the bottom line, though, appears that it's kind of tipping to not to the working class, and we needed to favor the working class. We need to build. You heard economic impacts here. Family wage jobs are important here in Portland. This is really incredible to me, but there's only 63% of students graduating from high school in 2012. We have ways, though, out of pathways out of poverty, we call it, through the building trades and waterfront commerce, getting work in these good-paying jobs with residents without college degrees. As Portland continues to grow, we provide family wage jobs with significant equity issues, and the infrastructure should be in place to plant the seeds for our future job creation. Development on West Hayden Island is projected to, you heard this, and I'll cite that number too, 2,300 to 4,000 jobs. I know, both direct and the peripheral jobs, waiting on people when you get to go out to dinner, shopping at the grocery store, buying a car, used or new, pumping gas, buying gas, some of us struggle with that. The terminal, the new terminal, would generate 18 to 30 million, wow, in annual state and local tax revenue. This is revenue that will go towards schools, to teachers, to fire, to police protections, and other basic services. The development will also keep the city of Portland in the mix as a global player. I know it's kind of projected, but with the robust international commerce network and strong trade connections. Please send a proposal to the city of Portland that contains a reasonable and affordable framework for environmental protections and future marine terminal development. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions for these folks? Yes, Don?
Bob, I haven't talked to you about the boat ramp and the prospect of doing an active park and motorized boat launch next to the Hayden Island site. Do you have a perspective on that and its potential impacts?
We haven't really seen an analysis of that proposal. One of the big concerns for the community has been the increased traffic on Hayden Island Drive. And, being a frequent user of Willamette Park, which causes a traffic jam and has a, huge parking lot, I'm not exactly sure how that would work, especially coupled with a marine terminal. We do believe the highest and best use of Hayden Island is as a natural resource and recreation site. I don't think the two are compatible. I think if you do one, you're not doing the other. We'd rather see that really used for its natural resource value. I think if you don't do the terminal, then you potentially have that possibility. We as a natural resource organization, we would want to see how you'd manage that so you don't wind up trashing West Hayden Island in the process. But there are examples, Willamette Park and Ross Island, for example, where they seem to coexist. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions? Did you lose the bet? You have to shave off your beard?
No, I thought you'd take me more seriously. It didn't work, did it?
I didn't actually recognize you at first. But.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Good, thanks. Mike, pardon. Mike Williams, John Molis, and Micah Meskel. Mr. Williams?
You're right here. Okay, yeah, I'd like to thank you for having me here today. My name is Michael Williams. I'm with Business Oregon. I'm a regional business development officer for the Metro region and was also the industrial lands coordinator for the department for a number of years. I'm also a citizen of Portland. I live in the Richmond neighborhood. In attracting businesses to looking to invest in the expansion of shipping facilities, the Portland region doesn't just compete with other sites within the Northwest. We compete nationally and internationally. And cost and time to market is a critical factor in determining whether we're viable. It's also important to hit the business cycle correctly and be ready for an opportunity when it does appear. Land use viability is a critical aspect of that readiness, meaning the annexation is a requirement for making this project feasible in almost all instances. For instance, we do not certify sites and are very reluctant to show industrial sites in the state that are not annexed due to timeliness and due to issues with timeliness and uncertainty. Over the past several years, there have been numerous studies documenting shortages in industrial zone land. This shortage is in both the gross amount of land as well as the amount of land that is available for development. This shortage has been well documented for the city of Portland as well as the metro area, and this shortage is especially acute for large shovel-ready projects. We need a broad range of sites with varying attributes in order to make sure we can meet the widely variable needs of industry. My understanding is that this site brings a number of key attributes, including its access to channel depths, its location in the Portland metropolitan region, ownership by an entity with a strong track record of development, as well as the ability to accommodate a terminal like the one proposed. The port is also a valued partner and a leader in creating jobs and doing right by the environment as it does that. I'd like to stress the extensive brownfields and wetlands restoration work that the port does and how it's also been my experience that the port continues to reinvest in support of this dual mission. And because of that, I believe we should encourage and help the port leverage its ability to mitigate, develop, and reinvest. Some good examples of the kind of work that they've done includes the Troutdale Reynolds facility, which is a very large facility with more than 200 acres of protected habitat as well as jobs. The Rivergate facility with Smith and Bobby Lake natural areas, and the Gresham Vista Business Park, which is just getting going and is proposed as an eco-industrial development. I can't think of another partner in the state with this kind of track record that has done this type of work on this scale.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John?
Good evening, Chair Shapiro, Commission members. My name is John Molis. I'm the Executive Secretary for the Oregon State Building Trades Council, which is an umbrella organization for approximately 25,000 union construction workers. And I'm here tonight to testify in favor of a plan that will allow a 300-acre port terminal to be developed responsibly, both economically and environmentally. Portland's a leader in sustainability, and I think everybody in the room can take great pride in that. But sustainability, in my opinion, is a three-legged stool: environment, social, and economics. And as one that represents workers and their families, economic sustainability is very important to me. You have to have a job in order to be able to sustain your family with the basics: housing, food, clothing, the very basics of life. You have to have a job. I'm a bricklayer by trade. I was working with the tools in the 1980s during the last very severe economic downturn, and you couldn't buy a job. And this economic recession that we seem to be coming out of now, in all honesty, is much worse. Portland has many wonderful amenities: light rail, streetcars, museums, OMSI, the zoo. But I can tell you from personal experience, if you can't afford a ticket to any of those, they all become pretty meaningless. This proposal has been under consideration for quite some time, and it seems like the longer it goes, the more expensive it becomes. We're concerned that if the port can't make this proposal pencil out, we'll miss this opportunity to provide certainty to businesses who are considering expanding and growing their manufacturing and export businesses, both here in Portland and in the region. These are the types of jobs that pay higher than average state wages, or higher wages than the state average. We also need the tax base. We're all in budget season. We're looking at laying off firefighters and police officers and teachers. We need to grow our tax base. You do that by creating jobs and putting people to work. So I would like to thank all of you for the work that you've put into this proposal to date. And I would respectfully urge you to find a proposal in the middle that will allow 500 acres to be maintained and enhanced as open space, and allow a 300-acre port terminal to be developed in an environmentally responsible fashion and economically feasibly as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Micah?
I want to start off by thanking the Planning Commission for being here, along with everyone in attendance tonight, because this is their civic duty. And yeah, so my name is Micah Meskel, and I do not support the annexation of West Hayden Island. I have lived my entire life in Portland, which I've spent as an outdoor enthusiast, exploring the plethora of parks and natural areas, along with the native wildlife they support. Until a few years ago, I would not have listed West Hayden Island as one of the most treasured natural spaces. For most of my time in Portland, I, like the most of others, thought Hayden Island consisted only of big box retailers, parking lots, and freeways. Due to its inaccessibility by land, I didn't discover it until kayaking from Kelly Point along the island. Like most Portland residents, I was completely unaware of the vast acreage of this extremely unique natural resource and the wildlife habitat beyond the freeway and parking lots that you view. After various other trips, I've discovered how truly vast and essential this habitat is to our region. The island provides such a wide array of habitat to such an extensive list of mammals, birds, and fish, and the value of such habitat is only compounded by its placement in the middle of such highly developed land. This island habitat is just the type of land that the city of Portland has prided itself in protecting. Instead of annexing and developing this extremely ecologically important island, we should protect and restore this natural space in its entirety so other residents can discover how special and important it is for our environment and community. I applaud our previous civic leaders for having the foresight to set up systems to protect and manage many of the most important wild spaces throughout the area while still developing. It's what draws people to the city and makes it one of the best in the world. I implore you to do the same by denying annexation of West Hayden Island, and instead give wildlife a chance to prosper and other citizens the opportunity to discover the island's beauty as a permanently protected wildlife sanctuary. If you are to annex the island, please ensure that environmental and community mitigation is adequate to replace what is lost and is funded by appropriate developers, not the taxpayers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. No questions? Okay. The next three that I'd like to call up are Tinsley Hunsdorfer, Debbie Silva, and Tom DeSheen. Evening.
Good evening. Can I get started? Hello, my name is Tinsley Hunsdorfer, and I'm a resident of Northwest Portland. From pileated woodpeckers to federally listed salmon, West Hayden Island is an irreplaceable haven for our city's wildlife. It is also home to our city, state, and national birds, the great blue heron, western meadowlark, and bald eagle, respectively. While I appreciate that the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability has put time into working on the mitigation components of this proposal, there really is no way to equal or increase all of West Hayden Island's ecosystem function through mitigation because of its location, size, and diverse range of habitats. As such, I believe this area should be protected as a wildlife reserve. It's one of the city's most important natural areas, and it should be treated as such. My support for a West Hayden Island Reserve doesn't just stem from my belief that the area's habitat is irreplaceable, but also from concerns that the proposed development does not have real benefits for our community and region. Development would significantly worsen air quality, the port won't commit to job targets, and the city and port's intergovernmental agreement may pass the cost of site preparation and mitigation to unidentified third-party funding sources, potentially taxpayers. The port has also made no real effort to take a regional approach to development by working with other businesses on the river to efficiently use existing land. For the sake of our environment, community, and Portland's legacy as a green city, I encourage the Commission to vote no on the rezoning and annexation of West Hayden Island. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Debbie Dietz Silva, and I'm a board president for the Columbia Corridor Association. Can you hear me?
Yeah, bring it
okay,
closer.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I speak softly, sorry. My name is Debbie Silva, and I am board president of the Columbia Corridor Association, an organization representing businesses in the Columbia Corridor. I work for Evraz, a steel company in Rivergate, and our services for Evraz are marine and rail dependent, and so these issues with West Hayden Island are related to marine and industrial development are key issues for us as well. It's been about 5 years, I think, since this process started to look at West Hayden Island, and I applaud the Commission's support of this process. The port has invested in good faith more than $1 million of city staff funding to find a compromise that fits marine development into 300-acre footprint while preserving 500 acres of the island for open space. The plan will come complete with trails, habitat enhancement, off-site habitat mitigation, improvements to West Hayden Island Drive, increased security, and community benefit grants. However, this third amended proposed draft before Planning and Sustainability Commission incorporates additional features that represent a doubling of the estimated total costs to develop the property. I think you've heard this from other testimony earlier. Those estimated cost ranges now between $69 million and $84 million, and a difference of over $30 million from the port's fall 2012 proposal. Stated another way, as you've heard from others, the city's current West Hayden Island proposal adds features that bring the price tag for mitigation and site preparation of the West Hayden Island land to about $10 to $12 a square foot. Similarly, land typically sells for $5 to $6 a square foot. And this land costs are far outside the market and certainly not sustainable, even if you assume that there's a premium for marine industrial lands. You have to ask yourself, does it make sense to recommend a package that is not financially feasible? And does it make sense to recommend a package that the Port Commission cannot accept? And what message would this action send to businesses in the city and the region? As you know, West Hayden Island is a unique industrial site that cannot be replaced. I urge the Commission to bring closure and common sense to this process and recommend a legislative package which reinforces Portland's commitment to sustainable development. Thank you very much for your opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Tom?
Excuse me, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Tom Deshane. I'm an industrial real estate broker involved in the sale and development of industrial property as well as the leasing of buildings, et cetera, for the last about 30 to 35 years. One of the points I'd like to make about 3 points. I've been serving on an industrial land watershed PEG group, been involved with the Portland Freight Committee as well as my general practice of trying to provide opportunities for businesses to grow through industrial usage of buildings, land. The 3 points I'd like to make, I'm for the approximately 300 acres of being used as industrial, 500 acres of open space. The reason being is that I think there are 3 functions that are very important. The use of that industrial land is paramount. It's been stated here previously. There's a railroad, marine, and freeway truck access that provide that use is a little bit different than many of the other industrial available sites, be it in the other parts of the metro area. So that use becomes very important because it's unique. It's not just another industrial land site. It can serve different functions, marine, rail, and trucks. The other thing that I think is very important is leverage. The use is a very important factor, leveraging that industrial land so that other jobs can be created on other industrial lands that are less intense from a use standpoint, maybe creating more jobs on in those other land sites that are available, even though we're short overall, is very, very important. I don't know if that's coming out clear, but what I'm trying to say is that when you have a marine rail type facility that is 300 acres, you can leverage the imports, exports either coming to or going from the region, going through the region to provide that infrastructure that you don't get or that you can't really do when you're outside that, when you're in an area that is not served with rail or marine, et cetera. Finally, the third thing that I think is very important is balance. You've heard, and you've talked about this, many of you, over the years about balance in regards to what do we need most? Do we need industrial land development? Do we need open space? Of course, we need balance. And I think if you look around I think that's of paramount importance. I moved here because it was green and because it was good weather, great place to live. And all of us want to maintain that. But I think the balance, we're not out in the middle of a forest or a park that has no urban part of it. So with that, those are the 3 things I think are important reason to continue forward with this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Graham Traynor, Joe Esmondi, pardon me, and Michael Williams. Did I mispronounce Mr. F-S-M-O-N-D, Smondi?
There's a $5 fine for that.
I'm willing to pay it. I can't make any. I got a willing partner here doing that. Well, is Mr. Williams here? Oh, thank you. Okay, then. I don't know how that happened. Martha or Jerry Anderson can join these folks at the table. Thank you very much. Joe, I'm not going to try your last name.
Desmond.
Desmond. Welcome, Mr. Desmond.
Thank you, Mr. Shapiro.
We haven't lost our sense of humor, right?
So forth. Oh, I should start? Yes. Good evening, members of the commission. Thank you for being a volunteer on a board that's tough. So I'm Joe Esmond. I'm a resident of Southwest Portland. In my business capacity, I'm working electrician, and also a business agent for the IBW Local 48 here, based in 15837 Northeast Airport Way. I've been here before, and I'd like to speak about sustainability, about it's okay to be part of sustainability and equity, the jobs. I'd like to speak for all the people who can't come here because they're working or not working. I'd like to speak for Portland Community College, who's spending money to have people trained. This type of facility would put those people to work. I moved here 38 years ago. This was more of a thriving industrial town than it is now. We certainly have the money and vision to do a lot of improvements to the parks, bikes, etc. We need to help out the people who need to make a good income. One day, this is what I tell my sons, the people who work at Starbucks are going to get older, and they're going to want to buy a house, and they're going to want to have health insurance, and they want to raise a family. We need to provide opportunities for these people. The deal was made, $500 for the environmental stuff and $300 for industrial. We can't keep shutting the doors for the future for these people, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Graham Trainer, and today I'm representing the Oregon AFL-CIO, a federation, statewide federation of over 50 different labor unions representing workers in all sectors of the economy. My colleague, who's actually in the crowd today, Bob Tackett from the Northwest Oregon Labor Council, and I participated in the most recent West Hayden Island Advisory Committee that met for several years because we're really concerned with the economic health of our city and region. In particular, we're interested in finding those really great triple bottom line economic development opportunities that can, in particular, create high-wage family-supporting jobs. With an unemployment rate that is still higher than the national average and still 2 to 3 times higher than that in some construction trades, Portland can be a great place to live as long as you have one of those high-wage jobs. We saw West Hayden Island as a unique opportunity to address this issue. We're now here almost 5 years since the first advisory committee was convened to help to develop an annexation and zoning application of West Hayden Island, and 3 years since City Council passed a resolution asking for a legislative proposal to be developed for their consideration. Of course, many have been working side by side with city staff, the port, a myriad of stakeholders to do the research necessary to ask and answer the hard questions. We're proud of this effort to date and appreciate the complexity of, obviously, the decision that you have before you here at the Planning and Sustainability Commission and ultimately City Council. One thing that I remember very clearly, and many others may as well, from this process was a comment that then Mayor Sam Adams made at the November 2012 hearings, that this was Portland's tough decision and that Portland consensus may not be possible for the decision related to West Hayden Island. He also said that the time had come for Portland to make this complex decision. Now, of course, we absolutely need to balance jobs with local community environmental impacts. The port has offered to address every issue they can, but the bottom line is that the scale seems tipped too far, and the current draft plan does not achieve that balanced approach that does all three of those things that we felt like we could do with this process, which were protecting natural resources, addressing community impacts, and creating an economically viable port development scenario. Without addressing this imbalance, we run the risk of not taking advantage, as you've heard before, of this unique opportunity, because there won't be any jobs created if there's not a development scenario to work with. Some will call no development a victory, clearly. However, working class people in this city are looking for opportunities and leadership. This body has an opportunity to advocate for those hit hardest by this economy with a balanced, economically viable development proposal. Now, of course, there's still much work to be done to reconcile this current gap that's been referenced and make this truly an economically viable opportunity, and we're hopeful and encouraging you all to work in earnest towards that important goal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions? Oh,
they want to say
Ms. Anderson.
Hi, I'm Martha Perez, general political activist and civil servant, and our best shareholders will always be our customers, those who pay our salary, and that's the taxpayer voter at the residence of WHI, the animals, the soil, the cultural resources that nobody's really talked about. Before we pave over, we have to make sure what's in the ground is sacred and protected. We're also looking at a new Vanport, a wiser Vanport. We're also talking about working with ODOT, TriMet, our partners, on mitigating the traffic issue. We're waiting for a miracle. We're also looking to see about other hotels to replace the Thunderbird or not, or some sort of compromise. I know if we can't afford to do it right, then we shouldn't proceed forward. And we stress cooperation, not competition. And the thing is that, we're all waiting for a miracle. And so, the money is there. It's just the people that don't always agree. But one day, someday, the people will show up, and then God help the money. Because the money loves it when they watch you argue and fuss among yourselves. That makes their job easier, because then all they have to do is just listen to the public input process. They just provide the funding. That's all they have to do. And, we need a miracle. And we talk about funding issues and resources. I think that answer will be solved. That's not the important part. The important part is the people coming together, the community, the heart of this process, and the concepts inherent in the process, or the concepts that create the process, actually. And so, so just looking at those things, for me as a Native American businesswoman of color and civil servant and activist, for me, the sacred sites has always been the heart of the issue. Before any of this happens, we have to deal with, the sacred sites. Because flooding, look, depending who you ask, flooding can be destructive to cultural sites. And how do we deal with that? Ultimately, that's where my heart and concern is before any huge, business. But I drew a picture of my vision for what would Coney, the new Coney Island look. So that which is old is new again. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can have your people's housing. You can have your animals. You can have your Ferris wheel. You can have your little movie theater, all of your business, your boating. You can have your business. It can all happen. It can be in a good way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Brian Oendorf, Norm Ader, and Daryl Glebe. As these folks come forward, let me tell the commission in about 5 minutes, I'm going to propose a 5-minute break. Those of you who are red in the face will appreciate that. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. My name is Brian Oendorf, and I live and work in the city of Portland. I'm an evangelist for change through the triple bottom line economic salvation. I was also a participant in the most recent round of the West Hayden Island Committee. The annexation of West Hayden Island to the city of Portland has been a lengthy, complicated, controversial public process. From where I sit, the public conversation has been largely silent about the economic, social, and environmental benefits of the project. This is the third time a committee has been convened to address the annexation of West Hayden Island to the city. Debate has gone on for over a quarter century. In all instances, there's been a robust public process with thousands of volunteer hours spent examining the key annexations. We have volumes and volumes of information in front of us. I've served on advisory committees in other major U.S. cities regarding regional economic assets, and I can tell you with 100% probability and certainty that this is the most information I've ever seen to evaluate a situation like West Hayden Island. The process has indeed been thorough and given our community a chance to weigh in. Last November, Mayor Adams made the statement that this is Portland's tough decision. He felt that the PSC and staff would never be more educated about the process. 100% stakeholder buy-in is not leadership, it's anarchy. True sustainability to me is defined as the progress that meets the needs of today's citizens without compromising the future generations to meet our own needs. To be truly sustainable, our city must stay keenly focused on social, environmental, and financial implications of our decisions. West Hayden Island gives us an incredible opportunity to balance all three. The current proposal calls for mitigation that far exceeds the nature and extent of possible adverse impacts associated with the establishment of a port terminal on West Hayden Island. As a real estate professional with over 25 years of experience, I've analyzed market conditions for the current value of industrial land and agree with the $5 to $7 range. If costs exceed market value, nothing will be built, and Portland will lose yet another opportunity to create living wage jobs and support our regional economy. A proposal so burdened with conditions of approval is equivalent to denial. I appreciate your efforts. You guys are all going to go to heaven when you pass, because I know this has not been fun.
Not a bad idea.
But the issue does come down to the dollars and the cents. And we talk about an $8 versus a $12 foot difference in mitigation. It's $55 million. This isn't a minute amount of money. So thank you.
Thank you. Strider?
Eder.
Eder, certainly.
Good evening. My name is Norm Eder. I'm here representing two organizations. I serve as president of the West Side Economic Alliance and as executive director of the Manufacturing 21 Coalition. On behalf of both organizations, I urge you to recognize the value and the need of the port's expansion plans in West Hayden Island. The diversity and opportunity created in manufacturing and traded sector living wage jobs are unmatched by any other economic cluster in this region, in this state, frankly, in the country. This is why the development of West Hayden Island is so important. No, it's critical if we want a community in which economic and social justice represented in high-wage jobs, skilled jobs, are still possible. So why does it seem that over the years we're working so hard to discourage manufacturing and traded sector clusters in this region? First, the River Plan. This threatened thousands of manufacturing jobs in the Portland Harbor. Next were the proposed restrictions in the Columbia Corridor. These would have made it next to impossible for hundreds of small manufacturing firms to grow or modify their operations. And now we have delay upon delay for West Hayden Island when our region has a desperate need for industrial land. After counting much of the island as prime industrial land for years, the city set aside 500 acres of the island's 800 acres for natural area, leaving only 300 for job creation. On top of this, the piling on of mitigation requirements further reduces the chance that business will locate even if development occurs. The city's decision, your decision, will speak volumes about our values as a community. And by the way, I'm a native Portlander. I grew up here. I went to Portland Public Schools, lived here my whole life. Do we want this place to be a place where public land policies are consistent, predictable, and supportive of thoughtful industrial development? Do we want to be a place where we know that the coverage in the New York Times, my favorite newspaper, lifestyle section, is insufficient when it comes to attracting and growing a diverse portfolio of well-paying jobs? Do we want to be a place where every person, whatever their background, can find an opportunity to support and raise their families? And do we want to be smug and comfortable and accepting that Portland will slip into the backwater of the global economy while our competitors choose to grow? These are the real questions which are at stake today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eder. Eder. Darren. Norm. Darren.
Hi, my name is Darren Glebe, and I represent, I'm a business rep for the Operating Engineers Local 701, cover all of Oregon and Southwest Washington. I represent people that operate heavy equipment, and everything from cranes to dozers to excavators to the dredges that have dredged the Columbia River to bring these ships into the ports. Those very machines, I believe, deposited a lot of this west end of the island that developed that island. That exact yardage, I don't know, but I know it's thousands and thousands of yards of materials. I'm here on behalf of Nelda Wilson, our business manager of International Local Operating Engineers Local 701, and I'd like to submit a letter because she wasn't able to be here on her testimony for all of you to read. Basically, I mean, I've been involved in this for a very short length of time, so I don't have a lot of in-depth knowledge. I'm talking a matter of days, so, and that's pushing it. But I will be investigating and trying to get as much knowledge as I can on this. To summarize, I guess we as operating engineers support the port's proposal to develop the 300 acres on the West Island. and to leave the other 500 acres set aside for the permanent protection. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And now we'll either go to heaven or some other place we choose for the next 5 minutes, and then reconvene here. Come back here at about 10 after 7. Is that okay?
Thank you, Howard.
You're welcome. Is Mike Ryan here? Chris Barron? Schooner Creek Boat Works? Hi. And Ron Schrumpf. Mike, Charles, and Ron, right? Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, did I say Ron Schmidt? Sorry, Ron Schmidt. Ron Schmidt got a round of applause before he opened his mouth. Pretty good, Ron. Well, I recognize you from the elevator. You behave yourself. All right. Mr. Ryan, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My message is let it be. I oppose the annexation for the purpose of establishing a industrial marine facility on Hayden Island. Hayden Island, the natural area, is simply irreplaceable. It's a wonderful area to have this close to the center of our beloved city. And an industrial marine facility at that location will cause irremediable damage to both the natural environment that currently exists there, to the larger community in terms of pollution, traffic congestion. It's simply impossible to mitigate the damage that would be done by the establishment of a marine facility at that location. That facility, as you've heard, is unneeded. Just let it be. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you, Commission, and no $5 fine. It's my penmanship. It's Chris Bakken. I am the Director of Operations at Schooner Creek Boat Works. We are a builder and servicer of boats, everything from Mr. Hathaway's canoes to Hawaiian catamarans that service the commercial trade there. We employ anywhere between 20 and 50 people. These are family wage jobs, skilled tradespeople. And I'm here to support actually one small facet of this discussion tonight, and that is the park and boat ramp. We do this because it offers access to both residents and visitors to the island, something that residents simply don't have right now, and visitors. Visitors bring real business to the island, not lottery dollars. It's a positive impact on the boating businesses, other competitive and allied businesses that we share space with on the island, to restaurants, stores, etc. This is a very real business opportunity for us. I think there was a comment made earlier about the space. This is land that's now zoned general industrial. We're talking about a use that brings visitors, and I would argue enhances the natural resource value, because these people truly love and revere the river. The people we're talking about bringing to this site, true, there are customers too, but I don't think there's anything wrong with jobs and these kinds of jobs. I had to come back from Anacortes this Sunday to visit a customer up there. I drove through Seattle. I don't know if you know, but this weekend was opening day of boating season. I drove by Lake Union, and I saw the sound, full of boats. We have an underutilized asset here. I come across the interstate bridge and I look up and down the river and it pales compared to up north. It's an asset. These people love the resource. They treat it with respect. I think we can serve them and help ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron? Is it not on? Push the button. Button should be up.
Is it on now?
Yeah.
Good. I should have known when you didn't pronounce the last name that that was my handwriting. Vice Chair Shapiro, Commissioners, and Director Anderson, thank you all for bringing calm and logic to the process. My name is Ron Schmidt. I'm a 25-year resident of Hayden Island with 3 minutes. I'm a member of the North Portland Neighborhood Chairs Network, representing over 40,000 Portland residents at 13,000 souls per minute. And I am the chair of High Noon, the Hayden Island Neighborhood Network, representing 2,400 residents at 800 per minute. We reside on the only inhabited island in the city of Portland, which can be and should be a wonderful and welcoming area for those visiting our great city and our state. But instead of seeing Portland's Hayden Island plan being brought to reality and the Portland plan being implemented, we see the Hayden Island plan thrown to the wayside and a perceived battle of wealth versus health challenging the Portland plan itself. You have heard from our Victor Vietz, the High Noon West Hayden Island Committee Chair and longstanding CAC member, on why West Hayden Island should not be developed, and if forced, what sincere mitigation should be. You're going to hear from Martin Salapikis, who is our High Noon treasurer and author of the High Noon Hayden Island Resolution, which discusses all the outside influences bringing destruction to our community and its citizens, and that the cumulative effects is intolerable. I would note that these outside influences are primarily from the state level for their benefit, but for our city's detriment. You have also heard in the past from the North Portland Neighborhood Chairs Network, representing the 40,000 North Portland residents who are tired of being dumped on, whether it be the sewage plants, the garbage plants, whatever it is. But it seems like the North Portland area has taken its toll and taken too much responsibility for the city. We will be passing again to you the November resolution from the Chairs Network opposing the West Hayden Island project completely. You're aware of the Econ Northwest study, the Multnomah County Health Assessment, both question this development. You know also that Mayor Adams, in his final attempt, proposed stronger mitigation to the mobile home community to protect their health. We know that the weak, the elderly, and the disadvantaged live elsewhere on the island, and we ask that you watch out for the entire community. We ask you to look at the other side. We hear pie in the sky. We don't see any jobs coming up in the near future. Any jobs that they talk about really are pie in the sky down the road. We would see that we could invest in other areas for a better solution for our community. So our resolution, as voted a couple years ago, is we are opposed to any industrial development of West Hayden Island. We ask that you support our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mike?
Yeah, Chris, I was out this weekend, and the issue of the potential impacts on West Hayden Island from motorized traffic is of great concern to me. I observed 4 or 5 high-speed boats in the Ross Island Lagoon this weekend going somewhere between 50 and 60 miles an hour with rooster tails 30, 40 feet high right by the bald eagle nest. So there are some concerns. I understand your interest in providing more access to the river, but there are impacts that we're going to have to wrestle with regarding additional access out there, in my opinion. I'm not rebutting what you said. I just wanted to let you know that there are real concerns regarding impact from motorized traffic.
That would be more of an enforcement issue than for the Coast Guard and our sheriffs, not so much an access.
Right, and there is no enforcement. That's the problem.
We would have, that ramp would offer an access point for those folks.
Thank you. Oh, Catherine.
Just had a quick question for Chris and Mike. As residents, how do you feel about having a motorized boat launch there as part of the park?
I'm Chris.
I'm sorry. Ron and Mike.
I have no opinion on it. I don't live on Hayden Island Drive itself. It's hard to compare a small vehicle or even a 3/4 ton pickup pulling a motorboat on a trailer compared to truck tractor traffic. I don't think that's a fair comparison. Certainly, we don't want the truck tractor traffic, but we need to share the island for recreation, we believe.
I'm Mike, and I reside in Southwest Portland. I'm sorry. I don't live on Hayden.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next three, I recognize an old friend of the river, Travis Williams, Bernie Bottomley, and Walt Evans.
Commissioner Shapiro and commission members, my name is Travis Williams, and I'm Executive Director and Riverkeeper for Willamette Riverkeeper. And yes, I realize that's a different river than the Columbia where West Hayden Island sits, but that's part of the point. Confluence areas of this type are richer in fish species and other native species, and that's a pretty important thing when you're looking at the Columbia River system as a whole, when you're looking at all of the funding that is going toward the restoration of habitat and floodplain lands, and you're looking at the restoration of native species. To us, given the history that we have, and I pointed an aerial photograph when I was last year testifying of development in the lower Willamette and the Columbia, you know, we haven't done such a hot job, and we have a Superfund site through most of Portland Harbor. Part of that reality makes me wonder if we got some of those sites cleaned up, would we not have some opportunities to meet this, what is described as a need for industrial land. But when you really boil it down, you know, West Hayden Island is unique. I had the unique fortune to paddle my canoe with some friends over the last 4 days. I got back last night from Portland to Astoria. When you look at what this island represents and where it is and how it functions, it's not just the river edge habitat, it's that floodplain habitat that's meaningful. And this has merit when you consider it against all of those other properties, both public and private, up and down that stretch of river from what I saw. A question I've asked in this process before is, what are we really talking about here? We're talking about an industrial facility, which is across the river from a large container facility, which over the years has had issues attracting container ships and lines coming in here. So we're probably ruling out container ships. It needs to have a rail line. Well, not for containers, obviously. Well, there needs to be truck access. I've heard this over the years. Well, probably not if you're not dealing with containers, at least at any high volume. It needs to have rail because it's probably going to be proposed as some kind of a bulk goods shipment point. When you look at the initial costs of developing this site and what would be spent, yeah, there'd be some jobs on the front end that are pretty significant for a few years probably. What after that? I would just remind us all to look at some of the existing sites that are bulk terminals that send stuff downriver. What do those really provide to our overall economy? And could some of the other sites, such as Vancouver and Longview, which I paddled by, which had plenty of open area, as well as huge piles of raw logs that are being exported elsewhere, what could these other sites provide? So I think having a reality check in relation to all this discussion about jobs, 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 in relation to these 300 acres is pretty important. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernie, hi.
Chair Shapiro, members of the committee, Bernie Bottomley with the Portland Business Alliance. We're a coalition of about 1,200 small, medium, and large businesses and employers in the Portland metropolitan area. The Alliance has been involved in the West Hayden Island planning process for many years and views West Hayden Island as a critical opportunity to provide family wage jobs, expand the region's success as a leader in international trade, and preserve 500 acres of open space and wildlife habitat. We support the allocation of 300 acres of important industrial employment land on the island under a framework that makes the area viable for job creation. Research conducted by Eco Northwest for a coalition of ourselves and others in the region shows that Portland's metro wages are lower than our peer regions and income lags behind the national metro average. When you compare our region's average wages to our cost of living, we are less affordable as a community than places like Seattle, Denver, and Minneapolis, which means tougher times for families, less revenues for public services, and a lower quality of life for Portland citizens. The research we've done also shows that there are two areas of strength in the Portland metro economy, and those are manufacturing and international trade, particularly exports. On average, each traded sector job creates 2.5 additional jobs in the regional economy, supporting local and small businesses. A cost-competitive marine terminal on West Hayden Island will generate significant economic benefit for the city and the region. It will provide thousands of good-paying, skilled trades jobs, the kinds of jobs where people without a college education can earn a good wage and receive good benefits. And income taxes on those wages are what funds important public services that we all value, like schools and social services. Portland recently became one of the first cities in the nation to develop and adopt a Metropolitan Export Initiative as part of President Obama's National Export Initiative, with the goal of increasing the value of the country's exports. The proposed terminal on West Hayden Island is an important investment in maintaining and expanding the region's international trade-related infrastructure and moving us closer to the goals established in the Portland Export Initiative. The Alliance and its members are also concerned about the environment. Our member firms benefit from an attractive, vibrant environment through tourism and the appeal that that environment creates for skilled employees who want to live and work in the region. What we seek is a balanced and reasonable approach. We think that the dedication of 500 acres of open space and wildlife and the comprehensive investment and approach to mitigation that the port has proposed represent the kind of balance that has made Portland a leader nationally in sustainability. Portland often receives high accolades for the environmental sustainability. West Hayden Island presents a unique opportunity for Portland to become an exemplary model for true sustainability, integrating the triple bottom line for job creation, community benefits, and environmental protection. I just want to, there was a comment earlier about Senate Bill 246 that transfers liability. As one of the authors of that legislation, I just want to clarify that nothing in that bill transfers liability from the port to the state of Oregon. It simply doesn't work that way. I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Hi.
Hi.
You should have a copy of my testimony already. Before I begin, I want to thank you for your service to the community by serving on this commission. It's a beautiful day and a beautiful evening. Vice Chairman Shapiro, members of the commission, my name is Walt Evans. I represent Pacific Northwest International Trade Association. I chair the Trade Policy Committee. My day job is a lawyer with Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt. PANITA, as we're known, is an all-volunteer operation, and we represent the leading advocacy group for increased international trade in Oregon and Southwest Washington. As such, we try and look at evenings, or we look at processes like these as a way to try and increase local family wage jobs, other benefits linked to international trade here in our region. I want to stress the important role West Hayden Island will play in strengthening our city's connection to the global marketplace. We recommend a plan for West Hayden Island, for part of the island specifically, providing a cost-competitive marine terminal facility which will support our trade sector economy by taking advantage of existing infrastructure and building on our global competitive advantage. Developing a marine terminal on a portion of West Hayden Island is critical to connecting our region's businesses with markets throughout the world. Why is a strong traded sector economy so important? You know the statistics. Trade jobs pay 42% more than non-trade jobs. They create 2.5 local jobs for every trade-related job. They ripple off benefits to the small businesses in our community. We're already the 9th most trade-dependent state in the country. 470,000 jobs are created and based on international trade. PANITA wants this bright spot in our regional economy to thrive. We want to continue to provide good wages and incomes for the Portland citizens, to generate tax revenues for the important public services like schools, healthcare, and law enforcement. Located on the Pacific Rim, Portland is a natural hub on the West Coast for connecting domestic and international markets. West Hayden Island is ideally situated. It's on a deep water channel, access to multiple transportation modes. This is the best local site available to meet the global market's need for export facilities. I've testified on this process in the past. I think that the 300-acre, 500-acre is a good balance. We've made progress so far, but slow-balling this effort, adding never-ending reviews and studies is not a substitute for action. Our region's economic health depends on it. I urge you to embrace a plan providing an economically viable marine terminal facility. We then can have that while also showcasing environmental sensitive initiatives that preserve for generations to come the rest of the island with open space and improved habitat. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Yes, Karen.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the gentleman in the middle, did you say that you helped to design Senate Bill 246?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and so the question has come up that there's some shirking of if a loan comes due or there's not enough money, that it's going back on the taxpayers.
Liability stays with those who took the loan out. So in this case, if the port were to take out a loan, they would continue to have the liability. So the bill actually, as it is currently structured, and if it passes the way that it will pass at this point, has no loan funds in it, actually. It has that structure in the legislation, but there's no funding allocated to it. So the way that it would work in this instance, if it were applied, and I don't know that there's any expectation that it would be applied in West Hayden Island, the port would make the expenditure and be reimbursed by the state. So obviously any risk would remain with the port in that situation.
Can you state who brought the bill forward?
It was brought together by a coalition, including it is actually under the Oregon Business Plan umbrella, so it was part of the broad coalition of organizations that support the Oregon Business Plan. Portland Business Alliance is a member of that, Associated Oregon Industries, Oregon Business Association, and dozens of others.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Herman Catchold, Mike Connors, Chris Harder.
Good job on the name, by the way.
Wasn't that good? I rehearsed all while they were talking. I was rehearsing.
Me first?
You bet. You spoke up.
Well, Herman Catchold, my wife Carol and I have lived on the island since 2007, kind of newcomers. We've got neighbors that have been there 40 years and more. Kind of what I said in November still applies today. This process kind of really started back in '83 with PGE, with their business park plan that the economy turned around and that failed. Then the Port of Portland acquired the land and tried to get something going in 2000 and a truck loop on 500 acres, and that, of course, failed. And now we have a 300-acre rail loop that is kind of a pass-through port where you're going to be transferring from rail to ship, ship to rail. Not really any jobs are created of value adding to product. My biggest single concern is if this gets all the way through the process, we've got this 300 acres all ready to go, and nobody shows up to do anything with it. Then how do we restore this 300 acres back the way it was? I think the safest thing to do is not to do anything with it, leave it alone. And something I said before at other meetings is I think there's enough industrial development on West Hayden Island now. We've got train tracks that have crossed it for over 100 years. We have a water treatment plant that the city of Portland has on it. We've got 2 right-of-ways for power lines that go across it north to south, one east to west that I think feeds probably the east end of the island. And of course, we have a dredge dumping site that has been carefully manicured of about a little over 100 acres. And I think that's enough. And the other question that comes to mind I've thought about before is, well, you do an industrial development out there, you get a tenant, you get the thing developed, where are you going to dump the dredge spoilings? Because you're going to have to continue to dredge the Columbia and Willamettes. I mean, that's an ongoing process that's got to be done. Well, where are you going to put it? You know, we've opposed, you know, dumping dredge material on West Hayden Island too, but still the other locations, that's very convenient for the port because it's theirs and it's easy to access for them to dump. But I'm totally opposed to any development out there. We need to leave it as is. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, you're probably aware of it, that Foss Maritime has sold their part of their business here in the Columbia Willamette to Tidewater, and they're moving out. And the other thing is the Columbia River Treaty that is coming up for negotiations here and needs to be a decision made by 2014. And then that treaty could expire in 2024 unless something is renegotiated. And Canada appears not to be too thrilled by the current status of what's going on. So I don't know. The possibility of having to do dike development, to worry about flood control, that all comes up because of that Columbia River Treaty. So that's an unknown quantity we don't know yet. So leaving things as is really the safest thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris? Or Mike? Sorry.
Do I get $5 now?
Goes to charity.
Okay, I can get along with that
Money's
plan.
going out of here awful fast.
Good evening. My name is Mike Connors. I'm with the law firm Hathaway Kobach Connors, and I'm here representing Hayden Island Enterprises. They are the owners and operators of the Hayden Island manufactured home community. We believe that the amended plan and IGA is a significant improvement, and it addresses many of the issues that have been raised by us and others in the process, but there are still deficiencies. And we've outlined those deficiencies in a letter I provided you dated May 7th and encourage you to read through that carefully. But given the limited amount of time, I'm going to try to get through and focus on two issues that are of particular importance that you haven't heard much about tonight. First one is a housing fund, and I've mentioned this before in a work session. We believe that the housing fund is a very important element in the mitigation proposal and are supportive of most of the uses of the funds, but we are adamantly opposed to using those funds to relocate residents out of our community. Staff, which we can understand, has suggested the approach of deferring that question until a later date when the plan is actually implemented, but it is so important to us and we have such a concern that we believe that we need to address it now. We're asking you to address it as part of this process. It's unprecedented, at least in my knowledge, to use funds as part of a mitigation tool to give people financial incentive to relocate out of the community due to impacts from a project. Our park, our community has historically operated 100% occupancy, give or take a site or two, and the idea of paying people to be able to relocate out of the park we have deep concerns will create economic damages to us, and at a certain level, and it's important to understand, there are no limitations on the amount of money or the number of people that money could be used to relocate out of the park. Could create some economic damages to us, and at a certain level, could make the park could bring the viability, economic viability of the park into question. But this is not just a concern for us. We don't believe that the relocation option only impacts us. We believe it equally is an impact to the residents. And it's that way because any portion of the funds that you use to relocate residents out of the park are funds that those that are going to remain and actually be impacted can't use it. And also it's going to impact the value of the homes for those that remain. If you have vacancy, the value of your home plummets because people aren't going to purchase your home when they've got a number of vacancies in the park. If you decide that the project is so incompatible with our community that the only way to adequately mitigate it is to pay for people to move out of the park, then I believe you determine that this project is incompatible and the only alternative you have is to deny the project. Second point really quickly is the CRC. This project cannot happen without the CRC, and I believe that the plan, although it attempts to address that contingency, does not do it adequately. You need to make sure that there is a strong enforceable contingency in the event that the CRC doesn't happen. is scaled back like it is currently being scaled back, or is delayed significantly and occurs after this project, that's adequately addressed in the IGA. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Harder?
Thank you. Is this on?
Yeah, I think so.
My name is Chris Harder, and I work for the Portland Development Commission. Portland is a trade city. The region ranks, and you've heard some of these facts already, but I'll repeat them. The region ranks 12th out of the top 100 U.S. metros in export value, and third for exports as a share of gross regional product. Greater Portland's exports support approximately 143,000 jobs in the region. For every $1 billion in exports, an average of 5,400 new jobs are created. With 96% of the world's consumers residing outside the U.S., regions that have adapted to this reality have proven to be more resilient to financial shocks and better able to weather domestic economic changes. Relying on the domestic market will not lead to sustained economic recovery. My point today is that trade is a key component of Portland and Oregon's future economic competitiveness. To remain successful, businesses must have efficient access to foreign markets. Local policymakers must determine how to support this need in a sustainable way. The Obama administration's National Export Initiative proposes to double exports in 5 years. They see opportunity derived from this country selling our products elsewhere. Complementary, the Brookings Institution launched the Metro Export Initiative, citing the fact that the vast majority of exports originate from metropolitan areas. Portland is one of their 4 pilot cities. PDC, and in collaboration with Brookings, the Port, Portland Business Alliance, Greater Portland, Inc., and a whole host of others, developed an export strategy that seeks to double our own exports, those that are manufactured in the region, in the next 5 years. Through the implementation of the Greater Portland Export Plan, our region will create and retain export-related jobs, diversify export industries, and increase the number of companies exporting. Much of our region's trade sector success is attributable to the global demand for our regions and our state's goods and services, but is also due to earlier strategic investments that support trade. Now is the time to also consider next-generation investments in trade. Thanks.
Questions? Chris?
Mike, a couple questions that you didn't get to in your letter. The distinction between the CRC full build and the initial construction package and the impact that difference could have here, and the parameters for the North Hayden Island Drive Main intersection. What do you think the IGA should say about those two issues?
Well, I think that the whole transportation analysis that determined that this project can pencil out and that there's sufficient capacity is completely based on the original CRC plan. So I think that the IGA needs to account for what happens if that CRC plan doesn't happen, is significantly scaled back, which is the current proposal that is being presented to the Washington State Legislature, or is significantly delayed in its construction. There's a number of issues that will create, obviously, not only gaps between the proposed improvements on North Hayden Island Drive and where the CRC improvements go up to, but just the fact that if the CRC project as a whole is not built, there's going to be enormous congestion, and adding this many trucks to this area is going to mean that the system's going to fail. So what the IGA currently says is, if it doesn't happen, then the parties will work in good faith to find a solution and address the mitigation. It doesn't provide for any parameters as to what are the goalposts that it needs to meet. It doesn't provide, most importantly, for a public process so that you and the public can weigh in and say, hey, it still doesn't pencil out, because they're going to have to do something significantly different. I mean, they're going to probably be doing the West Hayden Island Bridge alternative in order to make it work. And the other thing that the IGA currently does is it ties the contingency. You know, it recognizes that this is contingent upon the CRC and that this can't go forward unless and until the CRC is completed. But the definition of completed is that it is funded. It will take anywhere from 6 to 8 years for them to actually build the portion that is going to benefit Hayden Island. And you don't want to be in a situation where you have this port project built and we're years away before the CRC improvements are in place, because then you're going to have a nightmare while that is during that gap.
But I don't think we see the port development happening in 6 to 8 years, do we?
No, but it depends on when, that's assuming if the CRC is approved now. I mean, there's a lot of questions about that, about whether the Washington legislature is going to approve their funding portion, whether the feds are going to contribute their funding, the permitting process. So I think the CRC project is going to be significantly delayed beyond the time frame. And so the question is, how are those two projects going to line up? Well, what the IGA should provide is that they line up in that if we're basing the traffic for this project on the CRC should be completed, meaning improvements in place before this project can begin operating.
Okay. And could you address the intersection parameters? The Main and North Hayden Island Drive intersection?
Yeah, when the CRC project was going through, there were a number of different alternative intersections that were proposed at the Main and North Hayden Island Drive intersection. And through our work with ODOT, we had explained to them that the only one that works for us and for the community is the offset intersection improvement, where you've got a traffic signal that's offset. And the reason is, in order to be able to get the manufactured homes in and out of the park, that's the only way that it's going to work. Otherwise, if you go through, which is take Main through from where it's currently located, from Jansen Beach through, it will take out several home spaces and other businesses. And so ODOT agreed to that plan. It's part of the options that the city has included in their analysis, and we're just asking that you adopt and approve that offset intersection, because that works for our community. And as far as I've heard, nobody is opposed to that approach. I haven't heard anybody say, hey, that doesn't work, you got to do a different approach.
Other questions? Karen?
Yeah, Mike, I have another question. I'm a little confused about your stand on the relocation. I thought that the relocation was an option, and that was some of the funding would be available for people's choice if that's something that they chose to do. And you're saying that you don't want that option. So I'm confused.
Correct. So the concern that we have is that if you make that a choice, then residents are going to be able to use those funds to take their manufactured home and leave the park, leave an empty space. And if you carry that out through a number of residents, you can take our park from 100% occupancy to 90, 80, 70%. Those are my client makes a living based on having a fully occupied park. And so every resident that leaves the park is going to be an economic hit for them. And then at a certain point, it may make the park economically inviolable. Park closures are sort of the trend of the recent days, and our park has avoided that because it's well located, well run, and we've got great residents. This kind of plan, we're concerned, is going to undermine that and start resulting in residents saying, hey, we're going to take our money and we're going to leave. If the idea of mitigation is to mitigate the impacts of the project for those that remain, the funds should be used for those that remain. We have limited funds. Let's be serious. Those funds are not going to be sufficient to fully fund all the mitigation for either my client or the residents. If we start using funds for people to leave the park, then those that remain that are still going to be impacted, there's not going to be as many funds available for them to replace their homes, to upgrade their homes, or to provide some of the benefits for the whole park, which we really push is this sound attention wall. Let's not only look at individual homes and mitigating for them, but let's look at mitigation measures that can help mitigate the impacts for the entire park and all the residents. Does that answer your question?
So
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, I would agree with the spirit that the mitigation fund, the housing fund, should be directed at community stability. That's the ultimate goal. But I think we also know that different residents will have different levels of vulnerability and sensitivity to the impacts from the terminal development.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it doesn't seem out of bounds to me that there might be a provision that individuals who are more sensitive than others might want to seek a relocation option, then it's irresponsible for us to fund that. I mean, we clearly don't want a wave of relocations that undermines the stability of the park. So is there some way to craft criteria that give access to that option to the particularly vulnerable residents while still preserving the stability of the park?
Just counterpoint. So you've taken care of the current resident that just got the funds that now can relocate, but you haven't taken care of the person that may choose to move into that current resident spot who may be just as vulnerable.
But is informed that the project is approved and can happen, right?
The debate here seems to be whether a resident currently could take the funds and run rather than stick around and help rebuild the community. And I think that's a debate we could have endlessly. But you represent the point of view that says, give us the funds, but spend them here. Yeah.
Correct. Spend and invest in the
I get
park.
that, but that may not be the opinion of all the residents. It may, and so I just want to be clear who you represent and what you're saying to the commission.
Yeah, well, clearly, as I stated, I represent the park owners and operators.
Right.
I'm not here speaking on behalf of the residents. We have spoken with some of the residents, and, you know, I mean, I'll let them give their opinion on it. But it's our belief that this is not only detrimental to us, but it is detrimental to the residents. And to answer your question, Commissioner Smith, the concern is that where do you draw that line? It's a slippery slope. And if you start trying to implement a plan that decides, okay, these are the people that can leave and define somehow what that number is, and these are the people that can't leave, then you create this artificial divide. You create divide among the community itself, with some people saying, well, why can't I leave, and why are you taking funds away from the funds that could be used to help mitigate for those residents that continue to remain? And so that's the concern that we have, is we're developing a plan that you can't really easily draw that line, and it leads to a slippery slope. If the mitigation is to help secure and mitigate the impacts of the park, it should be used for that purposes, not for relocating people out.
I don't want to debate this. I think we have a point of view and a point of perspective here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any, Deborah Heckhauser, Deanna Sawtell, and Art Llewellyn. Art Llewellyn. I'm just going to read the date. And May 7th. You know May, don't you? Remember May? You went to high school with May. Ms. Hinkhausen? Heckhausen. Heckhausen.
German. Simple.
Heckhausen. Hi, Ms. Heckhausen.
Hi.
Hi. We recognize Mr. Llewellyn. First? No, I just want to make sure you were seated. Ms. Heckhausen?
Hi, Commission. I'm Deborah Heckhausen, and I represent the Mobile Home Park. I'm the Vice President of the Homeowners Association, and I'm also a member of the Hayden Island Livability Project. Just as the stewards of the CRC project chose to ignore bridge height, the Port and the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability have chosen to ignore significant flaws in function, feasibility, or need for the project, or address environmental and human health impact. Instead of examining and evaluating regional shipping commerce issues using a viable business model, the Port chooses to destroy natural wildlife habitat blindly, regardless of the plans and activities on the other side of the river, regionally or globally. The Port plans to extend 2 long piers into the Columbia Channel and build a loop rail loop and manufacturing facility on Hayden Island 1/2 mile from a low-income, affordable residential community. The Port wants to turn the only road running east and west on the island into a truck route, further adding congestion, noise, vibration, and pollution to the community that exists on a very narrow island. First, the Port claimed that 2,000 trucks a day will pass through neighborhoods along the single road, so the traffic impact would be negligible. Haha. The Port claims that 600 to 1,000 people will work at the Port and manufacturing facility. How do they think workers will get to and from work? People drive to work in motor vehicles. Workers will make 1 trip to work, 1 trip back, plus a good portion will drive to the mall area for lunch and meals, making another 2 trips. Island traffic is already difficult with a population of about 2,300 people, plus mall workers, shoppers, existing industrial and business patrons, and workers. When we brought the problem up and how ridiculous it sounds, they arbitrarily said it would be 205 trucks a day instead. With or without the CRC project, with or without the CRC project, the project obstructs transportation flow on West Hayden Island. Heavy industrial development is not a good idea. The port has failed to address important logistic, monetary, environmental, and human health impacts. It is apparent that the port lacks credibility, transparency, thoroughness, and has no sense of social responsibility. The rail yard, toxins, black smoke, wastewater spewing ships would be a half mile from a residential community. According to extensive studies completed in California, the California Air Resources Board states that such facilities should not be constructed within 1 mile of residential areas due to serious evidenced human health consequences. The port has not considered or included necessary planning or expenses related to the extensive mitigation needed to offset the impact, if it's even possible, and chooses to put the taxpayers on the hook for yet another port boondoggle.
Thank you. Mr. Llewellyn?
My name's Art Llewellyn. I want to add something to the discussion, and I think I can do that. I have been involved with the Columbia River Crossing Project since the time it started, 2006. What I want to add is a transportation related. I say that the projects are connected. And I want to submit this little thing. Can I do that today? Just have it submitted?
Yeah.
Okay. And I want to read. It just takes a bits of simplify what I'm trying to say about any point that you want to add to the discussion. I say that my number one reason, there's lots of reasons to oppose developing West Hayden Island. I say it's a huge impact on the island. Absolutely, it's disgusting. Please, yes, this is not all about just creating jobs. We need to create jobs. I was a contractor in the 1980s, and I appreciate good hard work. And I do not agree with the idea of creating jobs in this way. I say it's the height of folly to install a rail turnoff on the island. It's just, you're creating a choke point, other uses of the rail bridge, and you're risking complete closure and derailments, which do happen. That's my number one reason why I say a rail operator wouldn't want to put it there. In addition, according to the predictions of global warming, there is going to be regular flooding in the future, permanently, is the worst case scenario. Now, so to invest in rail, that's going to happen in North Portland too. So to be investing in rail, you should make it in North Portland to prepare for those flooding that's going to, let's just assume it's going to happen. So those are my number 1 and 2 points to consider. The others, I say, are very important for the livability of the island, that this doesn't happen. The tying together of the Columbia River Crossing Project and the West Hayden Island, the mayor said in his State of the City speech that maybe we should be shelving the Columbia River project. I believe that the project is shelved. It is shelved because the double-deck bridge is a no-go. It's not going to happen. We got half a minute left. The clearance on the river, of course, that should have been obvious. Back in 2008 when that decision was made. The structure, I have objections with the structure of the double deck itself, and I'm saying, how can they even propose to build that? And finally, the ramp system for Hayden Island. They're saying it's safer. It's not safer. It's not safer at all. It's much more dangerous. You can count on a higher statistical accident rate on that interchange designed for Hayden Island, with all the rest that goes along with it, and traffic, all the rest. So I think that sums it up for me. I'll pass this one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Sawtelle, hi.
Hi. My name is Deanna Sawtelle. I'm an educator and was a union member for 30 years. I've lived in the Portland area my whole life, and as a former union member, I fully understand the importance of jobs in our community. Based on the information presented, though, I question whether this project will ever deliver the economic benefits that are being used to justify moving it forward. More importantly, I recognize it's also important to protect our ecosystem and that very little of the habitat at the confluence remains. The proposal calls for a 500, 300-acre split between open space and development. On paper, this seems like a fair compromise, but in reality, it's not. First of all, think about the bigger landscape, not just the island itself. The vast majority of the confluence area is already filled, paved, and developed. Now we're talking about developing a significant portion of one of the few large, intact, natural areas that's still there. We cannot continue to chip away at what little remains and pretend this somehow represents balance. Second, the 300-acre development is located in the heart of the natural area. The 500 acres of open space that would remain would be highly fragmented and disturbed, with a large percentage becoming edge habitat that greatly decreases its ecological function. The unfragmented stand of cottonwood ash forest currently on the island provides critical interior habitat for pileated woodpeckers and a variety of other at-risk species. Our system is already way out of balance, as reflected in the decline of salmon and many other species. Jobs shouldn't be used to justify development that's not economically or environmentally sustainable. While I oppose development of West Hayden Island, if you do decide to move forward, please enforce full mitigation to restore habitat that will be lost. If this development is indeed as economically viable as claimed, there should be more than enough funding available for full mitigation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all. Thank you. Virginia Ross, Tom Dana, Mark Childs. You've all been upgraded to first class. Just kind of keeping people awake.
Well done.
We may get there. I'm missing somebody here. Ms. Ross?
Tom or Mark?
I'm Ross. I'm Virginia
Tom?
Ross.
Mark? Mark. No Mark. Then Pamela Ferguson? Good evening, Virginia.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, you're up.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to voice our concerns regarding the proposed marine industrial port on West Hayden Island. My name is Virginia Ross, and I live in Northwest Portland. I came here today as a concerned citizen and want you to know that I spent my career as a union labor relations specialist, so I am an advocate for living wage jobs and benefits. I am also concerned about protecting fragile ecosystems and imperiled wildlife that may be impacted by this proposed annexation. What are the considerations that we must put before us before a decision is made? The port is attempting to gain support with the promise of jobs. And as I sat here this evening and I heard the trade unionists come forward and plead with you that this will create jobs, I have not heard any testimony or seen any evidence that any jobs will be created within the next 10 years, 40 years, or possibly ever. There are no guarantees that there will be any jobs. They may never come. In the meantime, the port proposes to fund the preparation and mitigation plan with third-party money, but if there aren't resources available, this will be funded on the backs of taxpayers. The proposed mitigation plan falls far short of dealing with the negative environmental impact at the start, and the port wants to be able to renegotiate this less than desirable mitigation plan if their funding sources fall short. The Port also refuses to consider cooperative agreements with the Port of Vancouver or to maximize their current facilities on the river. And we have to take this into consideration regarding the creation of jobs. If the Port truly maximizes their current resources, I believe that they could be creating living wage jobs with benefits for the people who were here this evening pleading for that. On top of that, there's continual labor strife at the ports with another lockout of longshoremen just yesterday. I don't know about you, but this seems like a bad deal. Too many well maybes, what ifs. I wouldn't enter into a contract with half-empty promises, and I wouldn't think you would recommend one either. In return for the shaky promises made by the port, there will be a major negative impact on an established wildlife area with its cottonwood, ash, forest, and wetlands, which are home to salmon and threatened bird, bat, and amphibian species. There will be a major negative impact on the residents of West Hayden Island, who will be subjected to increased air pollution, noise pollution, and traffic congestion. Citizens of Portland and West Hayden Island, as well as the tribal nations, are opposed to this proposal. Humans have the choice of destroying this pristine habitat or being a voice for its protection. I hope you will be the voice for its protection, and I hope you will not leave us with a ruined habitat with all of its negative impact based on the shaky promises of the port for economic development and jobs. How ugly, how ugly. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Dana?
You can have
We gotta get 3 microphones. Somebody want to give up a microphone?
Tom only
Is
needs
this-
one.
Yeah, you look like you're
This work?
addressing the nation here with the 2 mics.
First, I want to answer Catherine's question earlier about, my name is Tom Dana, and I live in the manufactured home community. I was on the Hayden Island Plan, the first community working group. I'm on the High Noon board and our board and Hill and so forth. As far as the boat ramp, and I'm opposed to that. I was on a couple of meetings with them about that, and I'm opposed to that. My reason for that is, one, air pollution, noise pollution, and traffic pollution. If West Hayden Island is developed, we're going to get hammered with trucks and more traffic, and then we add that to the mix, and we get more pollution, everything. So that's my opinion on that. I sat in the back of the room, and I was listening to all the various business associations and labor unions talk, and everyone, and they're vague. They're vague. They have no numbers to back up the jobs, no numbers at all. And I was looking, these are the numbers from the Port of Portland website. Grain is 10% less last year than in 1982. Well, we don't need a new terminal. We need to ship, people in China or Japan or wherever to buy more grain. But building a terminal isn't going to help that. Automobiles were 10% greater last year than in 1982. And 82, as I remember, was a recession. So we're not doing very well. And with the post-Panamax ships, if you look at the number of vessel calls over the last 30 years, number of vessels goes down, tonnage goes up, meaning bigger and bigger ships, continually bigger and bigger ships. When post-Panamax goes through, they ship out of Japan or China, go through the Panama Canal and up the Mississippi, or over to New York or Charleston or wherever. So that's going to hit us hard, I think. Pete?
You got about 20 seconds to wind it up.
The other point I want to make is the manufactured home community is an environmental justice community. and we're getting hammered hard. The very fact that people think about offering money to move away says, we're going to destroy your community, so here's some money to leave. That's exactly what that says. And this is an environmental justice community, and that's what that's all about.
Thank you, Mr. Dana. Ms. Ferguson?
Do I get 2 mics too?
No.
My name is Pamela Ferguson. I live in the manufactured home community. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. I've lived on the island for 10 years. I'm also a board member on High Noon, and I've been involved with the West Hayden Island process since its beginning. Tom and I have been each other's alternate on each working group, and thank goodness he did such a fabulous job. My biggest concern is I'm worried about the demise of our wonderful manufactured home community on Hayden Island. I've always said it. People looked at me like I was crazy, but now you've heard it here tonight. If we start moving out of the community, we're a cash cow for the management company that owns the park, and if they can't make the money off of our site rents, their investment is less. We were and still are opposed to the annexation and development of West Hayden Island. It does not make sense for a marine industrial development on an island a half a mile away from a vulnerable, affordable housing community with a very strict and limited roadway leading through the community to the facility. The health impact assessment, mentioned only in the summary of the technical studies, gives a pretty grim picture of life with a dirty industrial facility nearby. Not only air quality, noise, vibration statistics, but the real sad story was the devaluation of homes and livability conditions, and particularly they spoke to the effects of the unique manufactured home community and floating home community and its special conditions. Regarding the community benefit grant mitigation, let's throw some money at those people next door to give them window installation or weatherization or down payment assistance on new replacement homes. But remember, those residents in the older homes, the ones that will be most affected, will not be able to afford mortgages on new homes, even with down payment assistance. So it's really, it doesn't make any sense. Mitigation sounds good to the cash-strapped manufactured home community residents, but I think green space, stable housing values, and clearer air is more important. How can we truly mitigate someone's health and emotional well-being? I have a unique situation. I actually work and live on Hayden Island. I work at the Oxford Suites at the front desk, and I'm about a 4-minute commute away from work, which is kind of nice. I don't even have to get on I-5. The development of West Hayden Island will be a loss of business for Oxford Suites. Oxford Suites will, especially if Mannheim leaves, Oxford Suites will lose somewhere up to about 1,000 room nights if they depart the island. Also, our tourism industry, our leisure visitor, I'm not quite sure what the impact will be, but boy, I'm not quite sure I would go on vacation and take my family and kids to a hotel that was less than a mile away from an industrial development. A successful port facility will change the makeup of our lovely island neighborhood. In closing, please remember the 2,400 population of the islands, whether we live in a floating home, a condominium, or the precious manufactured home community that will be in jeopardy of disappearing, much like the bald eagles and the other wildlife on West Hayden Island. Please oppose annexation and development of West Hayden Island, the true emerald of Portland. Thank you.
Thank you. Hang on one sec. Chris has a question.
So Pam, if you believe that down payment assistance is insufficient to help homeowners replace the older units, which I think we all would agree should be replaced, how sweet a package does it take to enable them to do that?
The problem with the down payment assistance is fabulous for a new manufactured home or a newer manufactured home, but if it's not replacing the entire value, you're leaving someone that's not had a house payment in 25 years with a house payment. And with a limited income, people living on Social Security and a little teeny bit of pension, they're not going to make it. Yeah. So they can't really, the whole replacement idea is fabulous and wonderful. It sounds great on paper, but in reality, it's not. It's not a reality.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just you can use this one.
One example on that, I know a lady in particular gets $900 a month Social Security. Lot rent is $519. Plus she pays water, electricity. I mean, there's no way,
No much left.
nothing left. So,
Okay, any other questions? Thank you all. Thank you. Virginia Ross. Oh, hi, Virginia.
You want to hear me again?
I'm not flipping these fast enough. Andrew Polta, are you here? Hi, Andrew. Jeff Swanson and William Michael Jones. Swanson. Oh, we got one more. Okay. Okay, let's start the other way this time. Mr. Jones, you want to start? Sure. Okay.
At first, I want to say I've twice won the Spirit of Portland Award. Metro's given me an award just out of nowhere that said I was an honored citizen. I've had exactly, when I get done with this cattle call, I'll have exactly 5 minutes of input on something I've been involved with since the early 80s. I remember a cold day in 1984 when I went to testify for the PGE proposal. My cow didn't testify. So, I've been around a long time, I've seen a lot. I've been 18 years in court with the port and have the largest environmental lawsuit settlement ever won in the Oregon District now. And this is all about Hayden Island. So when they pick their 25 special citizens that get to participate in this process, they not only didn't pick me, they didn't pick one of the 75,000 people in traditional North Portland that have lived next to the port and have used West Hayden Island for all those years. Now, you're going to do this with an IGA. It's not legal. You have authority, only the authority you get through LDC in the state. And the state, this is a comprehensive map plan amendment. If you want to make a annexation, fine. I wouldn't even be here. But if you're going to change the comprehensive plan without any of the strictures, without an honest broker, without a chance to answer the staff report, last time they said, where's the staff report? Now we're going to get one, but after we've testified. The other thing is I don't think you guys are capable of making this decision. One is I don't think there's anybody up here who could tell me the difference between a floodway and the floodplain, and you shouldn't have to. What you need to do is let the Corps, who does this for FEMA, do what they've done for all of the rest, all of the areas in the Willamette. They've let the Corps do the firm map, FIR map, and they do it with a computer program, and they do it for free. All you have to do is ask them to do it. Why haven't you asked them to do it? Because they'll say the first thing is the port has been filling since 1995 when the city took over responsibility for West Hayden Island. They've been filling into the floodway, not the floodplain, but in the floodway. And if you look at your own regulations and say you don't fill into the floodway unless it's mitigated. I remember when I spoke at PGE, they agreed to remove a huge 100-acre section of West Hayden Island for the mitigation for the filling they did. The port did the filling they offered without any mitigation, without anything. I've seen reports, and I've seen reports from the port that say they have influenced the floodway and they need to do mitigation. So you're going to approve this. You're going to approve this and put a patina of legality on the illegal flooding, filling into the floodplain. One more thing I've got to say is none of you, I can say none of you have looked at the staff's own ownership map. Not one of you has. You look at that map and you'll see the port does not own 300 acres. Yeah, I mean, that's just fine. I mean, all this investment, why don't you find somebody that has time to listen to the real concerns about West Hayden Island?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Polta?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Andrew Polta. I work throughout the region as an archaeologist, and I'm speaking tonight as a concerned citizen. First, I would like to thank the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability for this opportunity to testify and for the time they have put into working on the proposal originally brought forward in 2012. That said, I am opposed to the development of West Hayden Island. West Hayden Island is irreplaceable as a vital link in the migratory route for Pacific flyway birds, as a habitat for several threatened and sensitive species, and is a unique combination of important habitat types that cannot be replicated. Given that it is irreplaceable, the city and port are failing to protect our natural heritage by proposing to develop West Hayden Island. They have also failed to work with other businesses along the river in order to make the best use of existing land instead of destroying this unique wildlife habitat. While I do not believe it's possible to replace or mitigate for the habitat that will be lost should development proceed, I am disappointed that the port is not even making a good faith effort to mitigate as much as is possible. The port continues to reduce proposed mitigation packages, dropping it well below the original standards set for a net increase in ecological function. In addition, the port has introduced ways it might be able to shirk the cost of mitigation and pass it to a third party, which could inevitably be the taxpayer. The reason this situation frustrates me so much is that when I moved to Portland 5 years ago, one of the reasons I fell in love with the city was its legacy for creating and maintaining urban green spaces. I've been to plenty of cities where all you can see are rats, squirrels, and pigeons. In Portland, you can see peregrine falcons and bald eagles. I saw about 10 of them at Smith and Bybee this past weekend. Some of them probably live on West Hayden Island. This city has made conscious efforts to be a livable place for both people and wildlife, and the development of West Hayden Island is not in keeping with those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Swanson?
Chair Shapiro and commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening. Passed around a letter that contains more extensive comments, but I want to just hit some of the high points. My name is Jeff Swanson, and I'm an economist in private practice. Portland faces an industrial land shortfall of over 700 acres, including over 550 acres for rail and highway served, large lot and river-dependent, river-related land for traded sector economic activity. Combined activity on port and private lands, industrial activity, creates 71,818 direct, indirect, and induced jobs, generates $3.5 billion in personal income, and business revenues of $7.1 billion. This activity has a jobs multiplier effect that Bernie Bottomley spoke to earlier, but the BPS staff estimate is at least 1.6. That's 1.6 jobs are generated by every corresponding job on these traded sector lands, and it's likely much higher than 1.6. These jobs drive growth in middle skill, middle income employment essential to the city's equity aspirations. Traded sector job creation is recognized as a key leverage point in reducing income inequality, human health improvements, as this employment is tied to compensation and benefits that foster improved health outcomes, and government funding issues as Oregon is income tax dependent. We have initiatives to double exports and are expecting approximately 6,000 jobs per year to be captured in the city according to 2035 planning projections. Land is needed to site a diversity of employment options for Portlanders. A financially feasible, balanced approach is needed with respect to West Hayden Island. West Hayden Island represents a confluence of issues. How we strike a balance in this case will form an archetype, sending signals to markets for capital investment and labor about whether Portland is a good place to invest and create jobs. Portland's industrial facilities are part of an aggregate economy, interlinked and interdependent. It is a mistake to believe that economic sectors can be de-emphasized while others are selected for favorable policy treatment. An economy does not function in isolation, and we may find that we proceed with such a practice to the peril of the favored sectors as we ignore these linkages and connections. I urge development and recommendation to City Council of an IGA along what the Port of Portland has proposed, which will help Portland meet the requirements of global competition. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you all. Thank you. Barbara Wilson, Bob Tackett, and Candace Larson. I'm looking at the clock and the number of testifiers yet to go, and I don't think we're going to get everybody in, but I'll know better here in about 10 or 15 minutes. We will conclude the hearing at 9. I hope everybody knew that. And by the way, while you're getting settled, I want to thank you all, everyone, for being so respectful of the 3-minute rule. Really appreciate it, all of you. Thanks. So, Ms. Wilson?
Yes, I'm Barbara Wilson, and I live in Beaverton. And thank you all very much for being so patient and listening to our messages tonight. As I've listened to other people talk, I've had a few questions, and you will not be able to answer them, but I think it's something to consider. One, is this port facility needed or not needed? Because I've heard both sides of the question. And I wonder what the credibility is if you believe one side or the other, whether your source of information is absolutely correct. I also wonder about Senate Bill 246. The sponsor was here and said that taxpayers would not be on the hook for these expenses. But you have to remember, maybe they're not responsible today, but that sponsor can come back to the legislature and make taxpayers responsible for site preparation and mitigation. West Hayden Island should be permanently protected as a wildlife sanctuary in all 800 acres. This is a unique, irreplaceable place in our city. It really comes down to a philosophy: is humankind the only life form that can be allowed to live on planet Earth? And if not, if you have respect for other life forms, then you must become proactive in allowing other life forms to exist. Now, I know that not one single one of you would take a gun and go to West Hayden Island and start shooting pileated woodpeckers. I'm sure you wouldn't, and you wouldn't shoot meadowlarks. But if you reduce the size of this wildlife sanctuary from 800 acres to only 500, you are taking away the ecosystem. You're taking away opportunities for habitat. You're taking away food source. And you've killed these life forms, whether you intended to or not. They cannot be condensed into a smaller acreage. The ecosystem will not sustain them. It's called carrying capacity. 3 minutes, really. There is no guarantee that there will be 2,300 to 4,000 jobs. There's no guarantee of that. And there is no penalty if there's only 10% of that amount. I do not support this project, and I urge you to not support it either. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Larson?
Hi, thanks for hearing my testimony. My name is Candace Larson. I'm a longtime Portland resident, and I moved here long ago, in large part because of this city's really smart urban planning and commitment to natural areas as a civic value. I appreciate your efforts into digging deeply into the costs and benefits of this proposal. I hope it's becoming clear to you, it certainly is to me, that industrial development on West Hayden Island is not worth it. As others have said, this proposal still does not provide adequate mitigation for environmental harm. It certainly doesn't meet the city's equity aspirations to respect the needs of low-income and Native folks. Without a commitment to jobs targets, the promise of economic benefit is really just a wish. Furthermore, even the mitigation package on the table is something that only inspires the port to avoid paying that bill by either reducing the already insufficient mitigation on the table, by shifting the burden onto anybody else, possibly including the taxpayer, or if that doesn't work, by simply renegotiating the mitigation. Clearly, from all sides of this issue that you've heard tonight, this proposal does not pencil out. It doesn't pencil out for the port. It doesn't pencil out for the West Hayden Island community. It certainly doesn't pencil out for bald eagles and endangered fish. I agree it is time for Portland to make this decision, so please vote no and keep West Hayden Island intact, where its value will only increase as one of the region's most important natural areas. Thank you.
Thank you. I bet you were lonely with no one else sitting there. My fault. I should have called people, but thank you. Dale Goldsmith, Rob Mathers, Michelle Delamink. Really? Came up blank? Oh, wait, I got one. I got Rob. Okay, don't sit down. I mean, sit down, Rob, but also Daniel Saras. Oh, good, I got Daniel. And Jim Howell. Jim Howell. Okay, hi, Jim. Okay. Gentlemen, here we all are. Yes, you go first.
Hi, yeah, I'm Rob Mathers. I'm a member of the Working Waterfront Coalition in Portland, also a member of the Portland Freight Committee, and I work for a midstream energy company on the liquid side of the business, handling fuels in the Pacific Northwest. I recently attended a national symposium on working waterfronts, which took place in Tacoma, Washington. The event was sponsored by the National Working Waterfront Network, which is comprised of businesses, industry associations, nonprofits, local governments and communities, state and federal agencies, universities, sea grant programs, and individuals dedicated to supporting, preserving, and enhancing working waterfronts and waterways throughout the United States. Being an enthusiastic supporter of the city of Portland and the state of Oregon and the Pacific Northwest, I was hoping to share some success stories with other participants at the symposium about the Uber plan-based Portland, Oregon, of all places, being a place that achieves balanced outcomes in the working harbor. Unfortunately, I had little to share. Instead, I mostly heard about collaborative processes taking place and successes being achieved elsewhere. One example is Tacoma itself. The city has a vibrant port, a developing downtown, a shipbuilding industry, an active maritime economy, and a robust but supportive community conversation looking to find a balance among competing interests to stimulate job growth, protect the environment, and provide access to all types of users. The tortuous West Hayden Island development process, as well as the unrealistic cost burdens being proposed for West Hayden Island development, tells me that Portland is out of touch and even regressive when it comes to achieving reasonable balance. Unless we stop being mesmerized by what amounts to a no growth at any cost attitude, we'll have even fewer success stories in the future. It seems that industrial enterprises and industrial workers are among the truly endangered species here in Portland. I therefore urge the Commission to make necessary course corrections by removing at least some of the many and costly roadblocks to responsible development at West Hayden Island and get on with referring the matter to City Council where reason and balance will prevail. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Saras?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here representing Columbia River Keeper. I'm the Conservation Director. My name's pronounced Dan Sears. It's not phonetic.
Oh, sorry.
Don't worry about that.
It's another $5.
Yeah. Our key concern, one of our key concerns about West Hayden Island is that the Columbia River in this area is listed habitat for 13 endangered species of salmon and steelhead. Huge efforts have gone into restoring salmon habitat in the lower Columbia River. In fact, it's been considered the linchpin for recovery. So everything below Bonneville. This is the place that enormous efforts are being focused to restore and recover salmon. So to that effect, I echo the comments of the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission and LCREP who came and explained why the mitigation is too unsure and not adequate, essentially, to allow this project to move forward. The overwater structures involved in this type of marine industrial development, the dredging that would be involved, the industrial pollution that could be involved, have the potential to significantly degrade and impact habitat. And again, to echo what Willamette River Keeper said, this is shallow water habitat, it's floodplain habitat, it's stuff that's not easily replaced. So I think it's accurate to say it is irreplaceable in this part of the river. The other thing that's really important, and we deal with proposed bad ideas all over the river, one of them is coal exports. I look up and down the river and I see not a shortage of marine industrial terminals. I see a lot of coal and oil export taking up space that could be used for much more productive projects. I think you can look at Longview, you can look at Port Westward. I was just down in St. Helens last night at a hearing kind of like this, talking about putting a coal export terminal in. So while these industrial sites, existing industrial sites on the river are being squandered with dirty coal exports, it doesn't make sense to take this green place and convert it. When it comes to mitigation, it's really important to note that for the purposes of protecting and restoring salmon, mitigation is supposed to be proven to be effective. And that, it's really important about mitigation. It should be in place, in kind, and in time. All three of those things are very difficult to achieve because this habitat is so unique and, again, irreplaceable. So to summarize, we oppose the annexation of West Hayden Island, and we ask you to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howell?
Chairman Shapiro, Commission, my name is Jim Howell. I'm here representing the Oregon Association of Rail and Transit Advocates, otherwise known as AORTA. We asked the Planning and Sustainability Commission not to forward a recommendation to the City Council to move ahead at this time to annex West Hayden Island in order to allow Portland development of a marine industrial port facility on 300 acres. We have two important reasons for this request. First, there is no feasible demand for this type of development on Hayden Island because Port of Vancouver will soon be able to develop their gateway site, Parcel 3, with over 500 acres of marine industrial property, enough room for at least 3 vessel berths. Second, unless additional transportation investments are made beyond those anticipated by the Port of Portland, this facility will have severe and unacceptable impacts on freight and passenger rail, and as well as truck access. Because the Port of Vancouver is investing $275 million in their West Vancouver Freight Access Project, they will be able to extend rail access to their gateway site without negatively impacting the main BNSF rail line, as would this West Hayden Island project. Therefore, any further intergovernmental agency agreement between the City of Portland and the Port of Portland should commit to the following transportation projects before annexing and zoning of West Hayden Island. The BNSF Rail Bridge, modify the BNSF Bridge. The Portland Transportation Systems Plan already includes a Vancouver BNS Rail Bridge project to replace the existing swing span with a lift span, and the project would create wider, quicker openings and reduce I-5 freeway lifts. Passenger rail bypass, build a passenger rail bypass on the existing BNS Rail Bridge, a future rail junction on Hayden Island, the existing BNS Portland Harbor Bridge, and existing Portland Terminal 6 junction in North Portland. The West Vancouver Freight Rail Access Project, with a $15 million federal high-speed grant from the Obama administration, will soon help alleviate some of the passenger train delays due to freight congestion. A new junction on the main line will be needed if the West Hayden Island is developed, will reintroduce the same kind of delays that the $15 million federal grant at Vancouver was meant to eliminate. Note that ODOT is currently engaged in a study on this. And in summary, our recommendation is there should be no amendment to the Portland's Transportation System Plan, and West Hayden Island annexation should not be considered before ODOT's passenger rail study is complete and both the rail and the CRC issues are fully resolved. To do otherwise is putting cart before the horse. If marine development of West Hayden Island does not go forward, the related rail and highway projects that we have described must be part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Chris?
So I'm going to take advantage of the fact that we have Mr. Howell and Mr. Sears sitting next to each other. One of you knows the rail network, one of you knows the river. Let's say I accept the assumption the next 3 marine terminals should go at Columbia Gateway. But the economic forecast for goods movement says in the medium to high scenario, we might need 6. So if the 3 after Columbia Gateway don't go on West Hayden Island, where in the Columbia do they go with equivalent river and rail access?
Well, as you remember what I said, at this time. Mm-hmm. In other words, there is no rush to move ahead with annexation or any other process because they've got a lot of excess development sites in Vancouver to be used before you get to this. And so to go go ahead with this at this time, before you even had the CRC taken care of and the high-speed rail issue taken care of, is, like I say, putting the cart before the horse.
Mr. Sears, where would you put them?
Good question. Is it a gotcha question? Almost. Longview is one place that I would look at. The existing Alcoa site there is in the process of being cleaned up, and it's also being targeted for a massive coal export facility, 44 million tons of coal per year to be exported to Asia. So that's a site that, you know, that's the least bang for your buck when it comes to building a marine terminal, is bulk coal export. You can't create fewer jobs per acre than that. So that's one place we would certainly look. And it's a big site, and the Port of Longview has actually just purchased another big piece of property just downstream from the existing Alcoa site. So that's one place we would certainly, you know, it's a brownfield, and it makes a lot more sense.
The sites don't impact salmon recovery. They're already dirty.
Yeah, it's a brownfield, exactly. So it's a very different picture than West Hayden Island.
And Jim, how's the rail access to Longview?
How is that?
How's the rail access to Longview?
It's a lot better than here. There is no, by the way, there is no rail access to this site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of these gentlemen? Martin Slapicus, Richard Carhart, and Jim Labbe. Nobody's named Smith anymore. Oh, your name's Smith. Why don't you get them testified?
Is that right? You get money for mispronunciations?
I only got two. Wait, two of you?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Wait, gentlemen, Mr. Slapicus?
Slapicus.
Slapicus.
Martin Slapicus.
I was going to say that. you took the words right out of my mouth.
I'm
Mr.
glad
Carhart.
I did. I'm glad I did.
Mr. Carhart. No, Mr. Labbe.
I'm Carhart.
Labbe. Ms. Lausanne. Susie. She was here a minute ago. Would you like to come up, or? I have a card with your name on it. You don't have to use it. Oh, Susie, I apologize. Susan Lindsay.
Lindsay?
Well, it's late. Come on. We've all been very respectful of each other. Susan, I'm sorry. I really read that wrong.
I do it all the time.
Yeah. You don't think you're Susie, do you?
You want to call me Susie?
Just don't call me Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Why don't you go first, Mr. Labbe?
My name is Marty Slapicus. I'm on the High Noon Board of Directors. I represent 49 unit owners of River House Homeowners Association. Chairman Schmidt mentioned I was going to talk about a lot of things, but I'm going to say that the comments submitted to this commission on behalf of High Noon on November 15, 2012 remain relevant. Attached to that commission comments was the High Noon North Neighborhood Sustainability Program based on three legs: the environmental development, economics, environmental stewardship, and social responsibility. All three of those legs are involved in the annexation of West Hayden Island, and High Noon opposes the annexation for West Hayden Island for many reasons. One of the reasons is the port has not, nor does it intend to exhaust all available alternatives for port expansion before a portion of the wildlife refuge of West Hayden Island is turned into concrete. Now, the BPS study, the coordination study, has a comment in it, a quote that says, "There is no interest by port or state authorities, nor is there a proposal to form a joint port authority." Yet the report notes that Oregon statutes now has language that allows coordination among Oregon ports on the development of facilities. Furthermore, it states, while the city of Portland recognizes the importance of the port and industrial properties in their comprehensive plan, the city of Portland does not have a specific marine port element. And that goes to the costs of annexation and the infrastructure that might be necessary. The final report offered that I'm talking about offered encouragement that such a joint port facility, though difficult to form, was possible. What it takes is political will, and it would require regional bi-state political support through Oregon and Washington legislatures. Now, while refusing to consider joint facility development in this matter, the Port of Portland's vision for a sustainable West Hayden Island included in attachment G of the IGA of the proposal is conflicted at best. It represents an incongruous impression of the port's West Hayden Island vision. The port's vision statement contains words and statements such as regional economy, the bi-state region every 5 years, steward of the region's community and environmental best interest, state of Oregon Columbia River system, regional scale commercial development, transportation needs of the region, supports the role of the port's marine terminal for the bi-state regional economy. In addition, Section 9 of the funding of the IGA states that agree to diligently pursue funding from non-local public sources, goes on and talks about all the various levels of funding they're going to go after. It doesn't sound like the port has any skin in the game. Now, what I'm suggesting is that this commission recommend to the council that they encourage the port to commit to exhausting all available alternatives for a joint bi-state regional port expansion to accommodate the market in which the port claims they operate, bi-state regional. Make this suggestion in spite of BPS analysis of the coordination study. Anything worth doing is worth doing well, especially when it costs taxpayer dollars and affects the health and livability and the natural wildlife habitat of a neighborhood community. What would the port do if the West Hayden Island did not exist? Where would they go? I think they would look at the Port of Vancouver and make every effort to make it a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Carr?
Good evening. I'm Richard Carhart, and I'm a Hayden Island property owner. For years, the port's proposed development of West Hayden Island incorporated a bridge to Marine Drive as the primary vehicle access for West Hayden Island. Then, the port amended their concept to delete the bridge and substitute an upgraded North Hayden Island Drive. Designation of North Hayden Island Drive as a priority truck route and the sole vehicle access for West Hayden Island in lieu of a bridge over North Portland Harbor from West Hayden Island to Marine Drive will cause major negative impacts to the multi-use Hayden Island development plan, to the livability of residences on East Hayden Island, to the redevelopment and viability of the Jansen Beach Shopping Center, and create increased traffic congestion on Hayden Island street network and the Interstate 5 highway interchange. I recommend that the draft plan be amended to redesignate a bridge to Marine Drive as the primary means of vehicle access to West Hayden Island. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lindsay?
I'm Susan Lindsay, and I do not live on West Hayden Island or on Hayden Island at all. However, I have been to West Hayden Island. Dear Commissioners, I fear you are about to make a decision that some might say is a smart decision, but in my opinion is not a wise decision. This place, this land in question, unlike the proposed development, is truly unique. And I just happened to have my iPad here while I was sitting and waiting over the last 3 hours to help me define that word. Having no like or equal, unparalleled, incomparable. And it is also rare, which means unusually great, excellent, admirable, and fine. And it's definitely irreplaceable. And that's primarily because all the others before it, Swan Island and Airport Way and Terminals 1 through 6 and West Marine Drive, all those areas have already been clear-cut and flattened, filled in, paved, and used up. So therefore, by its very definition, a place that is unique, rare, irreplaceable, and by the way, also very beautiful, is not a place to be diminished, partitioned, mitigated, and managed. It is instead a place to be admired, supported, protected, and enjoyed by generations to come for that which is so irreplaceably wonderful and special about it. Its very unique, rare, and irreplaceable, lush nature. I urge you to recognize this and to grab the opportunity that has presented itself here to you to make the wise decision and protect not developed West Hayden Island. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. There's one more testifier, and that's Brianna King. Brianna? You're last. Well, you're not last. That's right.
Okay. My name is Brianna King. I moved to Portland from Ohio just this past June, so I am very new to the entire area and to the Northwest ecosystem. But I came out here because of the reputation of this area for conservation-minded thinking, environmental awareness, and a heightened sense of responsibility in regard to our planet. That's why I was extremely disappointed to hear about the possibility of this development on West Hayden Island. In specifics, I would like to talk about, the topic of mitigating wetlands and mitigating forest habitats to somehow offset the development of this area. I do not think that there is any way to mitigate this area. As was just said, many other areas just like it have been paved and already converted to human use, and this is one of the last that we have left. And it creates areas for wildlife which we cannot replace. Even if you try to create an environment somewhere else, there's no way that we can consider, put in all the factors that would make it equal. The other thing is fragmentation. If we're fragmenting this habitat and breaking it up, it's a true example of some of the parts is not equal to the whole. If I put it in extreme layman's terms, if you wanted a yard for your dog of a large size and instead you were offered 5 sections that were split up, would that be the same thing? Would that be as effective? Would you consider that to be the same? No, and there's great problems with fragmentation. This is already an island ecosystem, so it's already small, it's already sensitive, there's already a lot of edge habitat to be considered. To dig in any deeper to this ecosystem would eliminate chance for some species to be able to migrate around, the stopover areas for migratory birds, as well as this hotspot of biodiversity. All of the things that are there, nesting habitats, would be destroyed. So I am definitely against this proposal, and I really hope that we can find a different solution. I think that we can't move the Columbia River, and we can't create a new island, so we need to modify our thinking.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else that is wanting to testify? And if not, Eric, why don't you come up, and I'm going to formally close the hearing.
Mr. Chair, could I
Yes.
ask that we leave the written record open through the 14th for folks who may have gone home early this evening?
You bet.
Stick it out.
Is that okay? Record's open till the 14th, hearing's closed. You were all wonderfully respectful, and I really, truly appreciate it. Eric?
There will be a hearing as well on the 14th.
No.
We're done.
Yeah, this was the deliberation.
Write us a letter.
So as I mentioned,
Within a week.
as I mentioned
Eric?
earlier, staff would be prepared by the 20th to respond to public testimony as well as the written comments and give you our recommendation for staff amendments. I did want to ask in terms of the 14th, if you have any follow-up questions for any of the participants, that's another potential use of that time, whether it's the port or other stakeholders, that's an opportunity.
I just want to say in terms of timing, because I want to get the target clear, it's hopeful that we will try to have a vote on the 28th. Is that not correct?
It's up to you when you want to take that vote.
I know, but that's kind of our focus point. We may not that day, but we may in fact say at that day we're ready. Or is that all right with you all? We need a lot of conversation. I know that. I recognize that.
I vote that we vote on the 28th.
He doesn't.
Or that we try and reach our position.
Well, I'm glad we're having this conversation informally now. I think we should. Don's saying the 28th, we really aim at it. So those of you who have real passion and skin in the game, get your thoughts and your concerns to us, through us, and clear to us by that. So that vote is an informed one.
Yeah, and if I'm pushing it on the 28th from my fellow
Everybody okay with that? Good. That's good.
So,
That'll scare
what's the
city
game
the
plan
council.
for our getting, because I do have a plethora of concerns. Are we submitting our concerns, issues to Eric and the rest of staff from the other bureaus, to which we're going to hear some responses on the 14th? Is that the plan?
The previous plan before tonight was that we would respond to, by the 21st, the comments we heard tonight from the public and from the bureaus that have submitted comments. We would give you a response to those things. And then the previous plan was on the 28th, you would start talking about your thoughts and further direction to us. So it sounds like that's possible to move a little forward because we may not use next time. We're going to be fully occupied with responding to what we heard tonight. So it's unlikely if you did give us your direct questions, that we would respond to those by the next session. It'd be more likely that we would be doing that after.
Well, if staff is going to get responses to everything raised by the 21st, the 28th may be pushing it for a vote. But the 28th would be a very good session to discuss these issues in a very focused way and start to formulate a position.
Well, you just expressed my concern that if we are, in fact, having basically a work session and a conversation, I think a vote on that day may be problematic.
Oh, yeah. I think we all recognize that.
Open to it, am I right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't say yes or no.
No, if there's.
I want to believe at a work session, when we have an opportunity to have a good conversation, that there is an opening that if somebody did want to suggest that they could, not necessarily say no.
I just want to make sure, for me, and I think for all of us, that I have enough information to make a rational decision. And when I have that information, I'll be ready to do that. I think that point could be the 28th.
I'm just saying the
We'll play it by ear.
And Susan.
I just want to have you all think about something while Karen's asking her question. Maybe you can think about it. And that's, is it possible for you to begin to put down your questions and send them to Eric? Starting late tonight when you start thinking about them.
Well, yes.
And because I think the sooner we have those questions, many of them, I'm pretty sure, are going to be some of the issues we were brought up today that we also had questions and we were going to answer. Right. It's more important to me that we make sure that we get the questions from all of you sooner than guessing at what you're going to care about from the conversations that happened and in the testimony today, that we go clarifying things that you didn't need to be clarified any more further. So I would just encourage, and perhaps you can think of how long that would take, if you want to take a week to get those in. I was going to say,
let's give ourselves a week.
2 weeks.
Let's put 2?
No, 1.
One.
Mike, 1 week to kind of frame our questions.
Yeah. We know what they are.
Yeah.
Let's commit to that. A week to get the stuff to Eric, and then for us all to see these questions so we have the same perspective.
And I'm not trying to push the decision off. I just want to make sure we have ample opportunity to have our conversations before that point comes.
You're right.
That's all.
You're right. You're right.
So can I try to summarize what I think's going on?
Please.
We are not going to
in
have
the absence of a competent chair, I think you should.
We're not going to have a hearing on the 14th, correct?
Correct.
Instead, that becomes the deadline for submission of our written questions to city staff.
Correct.
With the expectation that they will turn those around in roughly another week or so following that to give us some answers, and we have a work session on the 28th.
Yes.
With
If
the
there's a
possibility
comfort
of
zone,
vote,
if
but
there's a
maybe
comfort
not.
zone, or if there's some variation of a vote, there could be a lot of ways in which we think about approaching this. But first, to get all of our stuff funneled to you, I think. I didn't hear you. Yeah, that's what I understand.
No, because what I just heard Gary say was, what we've done is we've changed, there is no hearing on the 14th. That now has become a due date for the questions that we have.
And a work session, I thought.
I didn't hear that we were having a work
Is
session
that what you
on the
understood?
same day that the questions were.
I didn't understand that, no.
How can we have a work session and some other questions?
Good, that's a good point.
I don't know.
No.
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 So nothing next week?
Right.
Yeah. Good point.
Party of Christmas.
I was only voicing, I was
coming
only
over,
following
Chris.
the leader.
Okay.
I do not, I plead innocent here.
You go over
Too
that.
quick a turnaround for,
Right.
No,
So
in
on
the next
14th
week, you will all get your concerns to Eric. We will take them up on the 28th.
Right.
Yeah.
No confusion at all.
And also on the 14th, any other comments, written comments from the public are due.
right.
Right, you had extended the record until the 14th for.
Yes,
and
we
that's,
do.
Just to
Yes.
be clear about that,
Yes.
that's five,
All copacetic.
that's end of business on the 14th, which is 5 o'clock.
So Julie will send an email out and tell Howard and I when to be here. Right?
And the
Okay,
directions
all
on
right.
how to get here?
Yeah, please. Good.
Very well planned. There being no further business coming before this body, I think we've done one more thing, Catherine.
Well, just real quick, if there's a possibility of a vote on the 28th, and then we have to have a quorum, and I'll tell you right now, I'm most likely out of the country. So I'm heads up on, I guess, whoever
That's a
else
good one.
might not
That's
be
important
here.
one.
Have your
That's
proxy?
important.
We'll have to pass.
Well,
There's no proxies. Chris, we got.
you know what? I'm going to adjourn
didn't do
this meeting.
proxies.
These people think we're, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.